Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the OverMark Podcast. It's our new channel that talks about wrestling and whatever we like to talk about. My name's TJ,
I'm Dave.
and we're co host of this podcast that you're tuning into this evening. Um, basically, um, me, TJ, I'm just a lifelong wrestling fan. I've been watching probably since I've been about 4 years old. I'm 36 now. If my math checks out, what's that, about 32 years?
That's
Um,
a pretty long time.
yeah. Uh, you know, I, there's been times where I've checked out and other times where it's dominated large chunks of my life, but, overall it's been a pretty big thing in my life. What about you?
I mean, pretty much the same. About 4 years old. I think I started watching it 1986, 87, somewhere in that neighborhood. I mean, so I got to really start watching it in the golden era, and then we
You
went
see, I
through
never
the
experienced
new
that.
generation. Man, it was pretty cool. Like obviously it rules to go back and watch, but when you know how it is. I mean, you
Yeah.
were a young kid when you were like 4 or 5 years old, and you're seeing all these larger than life characters. Especially then, it was just like they were like action figures.
Yeah, it's never the same unless you're kind of living in the era. That's why, like, when you try to explain like living in the Attitude Era to people now, it's not something that they can really understand. They just look at the product, and because like it's not 100% polished like what we're watching today, they it's something that they don't look at like a good product. When in reality, it's like back that it nothing comes close.
Right, they had an entire roster of Hall of Fame, dude. Like even your mid card guys were Hall of Famers. So it's like,
And the guys that weren't mid card, the lower level guys, like somebody like Spike Dudley, they're like insanely entertaining. They always found a spot for him on the show because, like, how could you not, right?
right, they're talented.
Yeah, but anyways,
Not that today's guys aren't. We're not crapping on today's product or
yeah,
anything like that.
we're just hyping up the back in the day.
Exactly
But
where we
anyways,
give people the wrong impression. Yeah. Anyway,
yeah,
go on.
you're good. Um, but yeah, like I said, we're just both lifelong wrestling fans, and kind of the reason why we're starting this podcast is just we talk about wrestling all the time. I mean, me and Dave are in here in our Discord, and we've probably been talking about wrestling almost every day for how many years now? Like 4 years,
Like
five.
4 or 5 years. Yes, basically since like 2019, 2020, we just been in Discord every day. We're talking something about wrestling, joking about wrestling, hitting wrestling soundboards. Like we've got just a lot of different stuff that we're talking about or doing in respects to wrestling daily. So this felt like the next logical progression for the two of us, just to kind of record our thoughts and get them out there and see if people think that we're idiots or not.
I mean, they're probably going to think that either way. We could come in here being like talking about rocket appliances, and they'd probably think that we're idiots, right? But
Yeah.
yeah, you know, we both watch both products. Dave isn't watching AEW as much as I am these days, but I'm watching everything but NXT. I'm enjoying Raw, AEW's rough around the edges. I have aspect that I enjoy. Anything with MJF's good. Tony Storm's great. But we'll talk about that here in a little bit. Um, you know, check out our Twitter. Check out our YouTube that you're looking at right now. We're going to try to get this on a whole bunch of other platforms, but for now, those are the two areas that you can check us out. Um, we're going to jump right back into kind of what we were just highlighting a little bit, which was what AEW and WWE are looking like right now. Um, you know, I think we were talking about this a little bit earlier before we hopped on here, but WWE is pretty good right now. They're doing the best stuff they've done since about '99, right?
Definitely. It's hard to say anything other than that. They just finally got to where they need to be after it felt like, there was a quite a lull probably from like the 2010s until about the time that AEW started. And, thankfully for us wrestling fans, competition always makes them do better, and that's exactly what they did.
I mean, they're
It
not
just took
lying.
them a minute.
Like, when you're a kid, you hear that when they were talking about WCW and WWE, especially when WCW went away. Everybody's like, "This isn't good. Competition makes this better," and It's definitely true. You notice WWE start declining in quality once WCW went away.
Yeah. One of the things that about the early 2000s WWE product is it actually was still good.
Yeah,
It just had an unfortunate task of having to follow
the best
the
period
Attitude
ever.
Era was the most successful period ever in wrestling at that point.
So I want to jump back for a second. Why do you think WWE is doing as hot as it is right now? Besides competition, what are some of the changes that you think are why this happened?
Well, I mean, Triple H taking over the creative and Vince being gone.
Yeah, that's
I feel
that's
like Triple H does a little bit more. I don't want to
he
say that he
listens.
books for the fans,
Yeah, but he does
but
listen.
yeah, his ears are open. He's like actually trying to do the thing to make the show as entertaining for as many people as possible. And we've talked about this before. Vince just booked for himself. Like,
Yeah,
oh, that's a great idea, pal. I like that. This is what I came up with it. I'm doing it.
genital
So
jokes,
what's
fart,
poop?
poop, midgets, pies, shaving, you name it. But that was tame. In the Attitude Era, he was like making out with the chicks and just, they're
Yeah.
like, what a
Uh,
disgusting guy, man.
the affair angle with Trish
Trish,
Stratus,
yeah.
where Linda McMahon was all catatonic in the
One of,
wheelchair and
hey,
everything.
her getting up out of that wheelchair was probably one of the biggest pops that I have ever heard in my life, man. You remember that?
Um, yeah, and
It
it's
was at
weird
WrestleMania,
that
right?
Linda McMahon is getting that kind of. Yeah, she got up
What
and
was it,
delivered
Shane
the
versus
old slap.
Vince?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was ridiculous. But did Trish bring her out, or how'd she get out there? I think it was
I
Trish,
can't
right?
recall.
And then she turned her back on Vince, from what I remember.
Something like that. Maybe that'll be one of the things we'll deep dive for one of the episodes at some point.
Yeah, that was a good one, and that pop's amazing. Maybe one day we'll do like watch along on matches or something like that once we got enough
I
people
think
in
that'd be
here.
pretty cool.
Yeah, but anyways, like yeah, um, and then what's hot and what's not here? Man, it's this is more the same. I feel like everything in WWE, if you're going by crowd reactions, hot right now.
It's almost like it's one of those like they have to actually try to mess this up at this point. They're doing so well.
Yeah, like this won't last forever, and it will fade. But it's like Cody's the face that they've been looking for since Stone Cold and The Rock have left. Like um, every face that of the I don't know what I'm jumbling up on. Every face of the company uh, since them hasn't worked out. I mean, not to say that they haven't worked out, but I mean, Cena and Reigns both were getting cheers and boos. Reigns at one point
Right?
was
It was
just getting nothing but boos.
like a split reaction type of deal. Whereas with Cody, he's just over with the fans. Like you don't really hear people booing it. I'm sure that somewhere in the crowd there are people that are booing him, but it's
Oh
being
yeah,
entirely drowned out by the rest of the folks that are cheering him.
you're never gonna please everybody. But
No,
there was people that were booing Hulk Hogan when everybody was cheering him, and same with Stone Cold. Just when you got everybody else going nuts for him, you don't really notice those people.
yeah. I mean, I find it hard to believe people would have been booing Stone Cold at
Yeah.
his height. But, I'm sure that there's people that are out there that maybe they weren't a fan of him for whatever the profanity, the middle fingers, all of that stuff. Maybe they were more into traditional values and things of that nature, but that just was a different time in wrestling.
What isn't working in in WC or WWE right now?
Man, that's actually a pretty tough question.
Because everybody gets good reactions, but that doesn't mean everything's good, right? Like, I'm not crazy about Bianca, but I mean, she can wrestle in the ring. She just has trouble talking. Charlotte, I think maybe that's something that isn't working, but within the show and how it works, I think that she's getting the reaction they want, and they won't have a problem acting like it's nuclear heat, right?
Right. She is getting the booze and everything that the heels want to get, but I feel like, and I was talking to some of the guys about this last night when you and I were watching SmackDown, is it feels like she has go away heat, like X-Pac style heat.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree.
People just don't want to see her anymore. I don't know why exactly. I don't know where the disconnect happened. That might have been when I was quote unquote lapsed, and I was kind of watching the stuff on fast forward a little bit more. But she definitely isn't in the position with the fans that she was a few years back,
Well, I think some of it's like that Cena stuff too. Like, when's the last time she's changed her character?
right? Overexposure to the same thing. Well, I
Fans
mean,
get,
she changed. I'm about to be negative, and I'm sorry if this offends people, but I mean, she changes her face more than she changes her character.
yeah, it's she. I understand that women age, and we all have a fear of getting older, you know. But man, she's done some damage to herself that's irreparable. Um,
And don't get us
she would
wrong,
have
we're
looked good
not prideful
natural.
ourselves.
Yeah, no,
Yeah, for
no,
sure.
she would have looked good natural. Like she's never been like the best looking woman in the world, but I mean, when you compare her to your average woman out there, I mean, she's not bad looking at all. You know, she do for plenty of people out there, and a lot of people will be lucky to have her body mixed with her natural face.
Yeah,
When she was younger too, like she looked great. It's just
yeah.
you
Did
know,
you see the thing where her eye kind of got stuck during that one promo?
and it was yeah in her mouth some too. Man,
Yeah,
I, I'm thinking that's why she was gone so long. They were trying to figure that out, and it's
right. She
unfortunate.
might have had, and we don't want to spread unfounded rumors because
No,
we don't know
no.
that that actually happened or anything. We're entirely speculating, like Uncle Dave here.
But she can wrestle, man. She's put on some of the best women's matches they've ever had at WrestleMania, and
Oh,
her
without question.
promos have always kind of been like robotic to some extent. You know, she's not her dad, but she's serviceable. She's definitely one of the best women's wrestlers ever. It's just when somebody gets pushed down your throat so much, it's you know,
Right. Yeah, it could be the Cena effect.
I think so. But put her in the right circumstances and have somebody screw her over, and she could get good reactions again. It just depends who she's working with and all that.
Yeah.
But and like I said, we were talking about AEW, and I think the only thing that's hot in AEW is Tony Storm and the Hurt Syndicate.
Yeah. I mean, the Death Riders. It feels like anytime I go online, most of the comments, in respects to the Death Riders, are just like people are tired of it.
Well,
You know, they
I've
don't
seen it.
like it.
I've seen it all. Every single bit of it. Like I mean that spike spot with the uh, the what is it, piece of wood or a bat with all the nails in
I
it
think it's
was
I think it's like a
ridiculous.
2x4 or it's like a cricket bat.
Yeah, I think
Um,
that's what it is actually. But it was terrible. Me and my wife were sitting there watching it. I'm pretty sure that was Dynamite on TV, not even a pay-per-view, and they stick that bat in
right.
his back. But that's beyond the point. They're terrible. But looking at the other parts of the show, I always enjoy MJF, but they've even managed to ruin him somehow. He's not getting the reactions he used to get, but nobody really is. I can't think of anything on that show that I'm really looking forward to. I can't think of any feud that's going to happen in the future that's going to be great. I can't think of any recent all-time moments that have been something that have been like something that I'll remember. Um, yeah,
Well, I mean, you and I've talked about this before. They don't put their big stars together. They have
no.
like they'll have like Osprey out there having a
Who's
competitive match
awesome? I
with
love him. He's great.
yeah, but then he'll have a competitive match with like a job. And I hate to belittle anybody, and I'm not trying to talk that, but he's out there having a competitive match, with a jobber where it's a 16-minute match and the jobber's winning like 8 or 9 minutes of the fucking match.
I forget who
That's
it
not
was last
believable.
time that he did that against, but they did have him against enhancement talent the other day, and it's not good. You don't build talent by having your top guy uh, have these competitive matches. You have the other guy get a couple things in, but you want to just show your talent off. Uh, have them get their stuff in. Have the one guy do one or two things, and if you want to have a competitive match, bring one of your higher mid-level guys out and have them lose to your top guy. That's what they're there for. There's levels to this stuff, and people know that not everybody can be the top guy. But when you have everybody in the ring competing at the same level, it basically means that this guy that you have losing all the time is one good match away from beating your top guy. And when everybody on the card is at that level, and you're not really hyping anything up, it leads to dead crowds, and it just leads to almost everything that you're doing not really working. You can have situations, you could have the exact same show that they're doing right now, but hype it up correctly and have the people tell you why you should care, and you won't have to change anything else. You could even do less in the ring, and you will get more out of what you're doing because you're telling people why they should care. Not to say people are dumb, but it, this is wrestling fans. This is what they've been taught in the U.S. Since I've been watching wrestling. And before, from everything I've read, this has been wrestling in the U.S. forever. When they started coming up with angles back in the day, when they started bringing weapons in, once they realized, oh man, if I screw this hometown guy over, they're gonna want to kill me. And they used to do that. They used to physically come and attack these guys. And they're like, not to say that you want that these days, but if there's no heat, why is anyone there? Does that sound right to you?
That's exactly it. These guys back in the day, I'll use like Memphis and stuff as an example, and I'm going to sound like an old guy here, but like these heels back in the day had heat that was so bad they'd go out to their cars in the parking lot and all of the tires would be slashed, and then they'd be telling the other guys, "Oh, my
If they could
tires
make
got
it to the
slashed."
parking lot.
Right, and then the other guys would be like, "Oh, you got good heat, brother."
Yeah. It's just, it was a part of the deal, you know?
Yeah. I mean,
It,
how many times did Lawler fight dudes in the parking lot on the way out to his car? Like
hey,
a
that's,
lot.
but that's the thing too, back in the day, and when I'm talking back in the day, I'm talking like 70s, 80s, early 80s. Like,
Yeah.
you had to be a tough guy in some of these situations because if you got your ass whipped in the bar, you lost your spot,
Yeah.
you know? Oh,
Yeah.
I can't have
Promoter.
this in the news that my world champion got beat up by Joe Schmo at Lowe's.
Right. You're getting whipped by one of the dudes at the bar, and that's not great for the promotion. So yeah, dudes literally would lose their spots over that kind of stuff.
If somebody was talking shit in a public area about wrestling in front of a wrestler or a group of wrestlers, um, the guy that you were working for would want you to hit that guy in the jaw and go to jail and he'll bail you out. They would rather
Yeah.
that happen than you not defend wrestling. That's how serious these guys were about it. And I don't think that's what we should be doing today, and I'm glad that we're not in that culture anymore. But, there has to be some kind of middle ground where somebody like MJF today lives in that character. You know,
Yeah.
that's what we need.
He's one of the last guys that I believe like tries to live his gimmick.
Yeah,
Obviously he's not in character the entire time. He's not doing the Undertaker type of deal with it, but more often than not, when you're seeing MJF in these interviews, and I'm not talking about interviews on
signings,
like Dynamite I'm talking about like signings, cons.
yeah,
He's on
Comic
some new show.
Cons. Yep,
He's in character. Like he is MJF that you see on
two
TV.
children.
It's yeah.
He will literally like ruin a kid's day. Um, and it's, I don't know, that's just a part of wrestling, Like you have this character, and it's just now for life. MJF has heat with this guy and his family, and
Right.
probably most people at that con, or maybe not. Smart fans these days might dig that, you know.
Yeah, um smart fans will always cheer that kind of stuff. And there are definitely more smart fans now than probably ever, just because of, there's a lot more transparency in what goes on in the wrestling business now versus back in the day. And then you just have a lot of people that are invested in trying to seek out information as to what's going on, because sometimes backstage is more interesting than what's going on the TV. It
Yeah,
just
I
is
mean,
what it is.
Undertaker came out and said that recently in one of his shows or interviews. He was doing something, and I mean, you saw that, right? He literally said, "Yeah, backstage is everybody's more interested in that than what's going on in the ring."
He did
Definitely
say
true.
that,
Yeah.
and that can be construed as a knock on the modern wrestling product in a way, but also not, because once people started learning about this backstage stuff, I feel like in the 90s, a lot more backstage stuff started coming out than previously, and people just kind of were like, "Wow, these guys are dicks to each other behind the curtain too," and
Yeah.
there's a lot more. At the time, some of the stuff that was happening backstage was just more interesting,
We have a
with like
short. We have
the
multiple
new
shorts of
generation.
that. Like the time Scott Steiner got in a fight with DDP. You want check
Yep.
that out. And we'll go more in depth on almost every single short that we had. Sorry, I cut you off there, Dave.
Oh
But
no, you're good.
um, e- every single short we have, we will eventually go over this stuff like more in depth. Like I just wanted to kind of get out there and put shorts out and stuff. But we
Yeah,
plan
it's
on going up.
content.
Yeah, we plan on going over like all this stuff. And I just want to circle back for a second too. And I don't want to make it seem like we're shitting on AEW entirely. Like I'm a diehard AEW fan. I've been to 3 shows. I live in the North Carolina area. I've been to one in Winston-Salem, one in Charlotte, and another one in Nashville. And I enjoyed myself, you know. I took my daughter there, you know, with my wife. It's you know, I always have fun, and AEW is the company that I chose to take my daughter to introduce her to wrestling, and she seemed to really enjoy herself. And she's watching when she comes over on the weekends. She's watching wrestling with us. So it's I eventually want to get her into WWE, but she's not here. You know, we have her on the weekends. And we just choose to just do AEW for now. But that's besides
Yeah.
the point. I just wanted to kind of let everybody know that like we are AEW fans. We do enjoy the product. It's just right now, like WWE was back in the past. They were in lulls, and I was still watching the product because I'm a fan of a lot of the talent that are there. And I get that you can't consistently knock it out of the park. You're gonna have bad times, and hopefully that's just what AEW's in. But it just doesn't seem like the guy who's running it has any interest in listening to any criticism or the people that he has hired in the back that have been doing this longer than he has. Um,
Yeah,
Probably will
imagine
be his whole
having
life.
Jeff Jarrett, the son of a promoter, guy that has run his two of his own promotions, like, and you're not gonna listen to that guy and take his advice. You're just gonna have it. Well, this is what your job is. Just do that. It's like, no, dude. You got Jim Ross. You got Jeff Jarrett. You have Adam Copeland. These are guys that have been in the business as long or longer than what Tony Khan has been alive. And it's like, you know, I understand that he wants to run things the way that he wants to run things, and it's his money, and he's entirely entitled to doing it that way. But they were better when we first started watching them.
Yeah,
Um, WWE was terrible at the time in 2019. It was almost unwatchable.
pandemic hit
And
and it changed it up for
yep,
both a lot.
AEW came out at a perfect time. You
They
know,
did
fans
pandemic
were
wrestling
really
better.
thirsty. Yeah, they forced WWE to step their game up, and
Yeah,
they started offering better contracts to guys. You know, it's WCW all over again. They're like, oh, we've got somebody that can compete with us that has money. You know, and when I say compete, I don't mean in ratings because you know we're not you know we're not trying to say that. You know, obviously they're never going to compete with the WWE in the
yeah. You're
ratings.
just saying that when it comes to contracts, they have got guys more money because Tony's willing to pay guys more than WWE will.
Exactly.
And which is a good thing for the wrestlers. Now all of a sudden they're making more money than they've ever made in their life, and WWE's putting out a better product. So if AEW is your thing and you're kind of more of an in-ring guy, then what's the name of the one guy, Ricochet? You go over there and then you do your thing there, or like Will Ospreay. Like there's plenty of guys that's what they like to do. Or if you're a guy like Cody and you're over in AEW and you're more into theatrics and just being a more larger than life character, you go over to WWE. There's two distinct options, right?
I think Cody was also more about like the business aspect of it.
Yeah.
And
You notice a difference when he left.
yeah, it wasn't great, and may not ever know the real full story as to why he left, but our
There's NDAs
understanding of
everywhere.
it, yeah, our basic understanding is like there were a lot of disagreements with some of the other EVPs, and we all know who those people are. We're not going to sit here and name them and trash them, but when you
It's normal to
can't
have
get along with the,
disagreements.
yeah, but they wanted to do wrestling their way. He wanted to do wrestling the way that actually draws money, and here we are.
Yeah. Nothing wrong with that. You know,
No,
it's just business in the end, and look at him now.
yep, he's biggest wrestler on the planet, literally.
Yeah. I mean, I'm proud of the guy. You know, I think everybody is. I don't think anybody's. gonna not root for Dusty's son. You know, it's he
Yeah.
deserves it more as much as everybody else. You know, all these guys are working hard for the most part, as hard as each other at least. You know, and it's a tough job. You know, like that European tour they did, that probably like made them so tired. But they're out there, and you can't tell at all that anybody's tired. They're putting
No.
on the same show that they would at a pay-per-view as they're doing on a TV taping. And that's literally like the key to it. Is like if your TV is consistent, obviously your pay-per-views are going to be good if you build to them right. And AEW can do that. But if they figure their TV out, they're going to really do good. And I feel like their TV used to be a lot better. And somewhere along the line, they lost their identity of what was working. And maybe one day, if they hand the book over to somebody else, they'll figure that out. But until they do that, AEW is going to be the same product that we've been watching.
Tony's never going to give over the book.
No.
The best thing that we can hope for is that they come up with a booking committee like WCW
Well,
style
I
back in the
think they
day.
do to some extent, but in the end, it's the same deal as Vince. Is there's one guy making the calls.
Yeah, you're booking for a single rich guy.
Yeah. And he's not doing bad, I guess, for somebody that hasn't been doing this a very long
Yeah.
time. And
And their
I'm
in-ring product is fantastic.
yeah, and I'm not saying we do any better. I'm just commenting on what we're seeing. It's pretty fair
Right.
to do that.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll see comments from people that are like, "Oh, if you think it's so bad, how would you do better?" And it's like, "Well, we're not bookers."
Yeah, I'm not saying I
And
would. I'm just commenting on what I'm seeing, just like you are.
exactly. Yeah, as a fan, especially if you've been watching it for a while and you're a quote unquote educated fan, like you kind of know what you're looking at, even if you don't know like the complete picture of everything. Like you've got a basic idea.
Yep. But anyways, I think we have gone on that one for a while.
I mean, what one of the things that hopefully the people out there will get used to with us is tangents.
Yeah,
There's going
that'll
to be
happen.
times, like we have a TJ and I both have a outline for the show in front of us here that we try to adhere to, but we try to treat this like it's a natural conversation too. So it's like there's going to be times that we're talking about something and then we just get completely sidetracked and we have
Yeah,
to
for like 20
double back
minutes.
to whatever we were doing. Yeah, just hopefully folks find it entertaining and not dumb. Um,
Hey,
we'll
it's just
see.
how we are. It's our style.
Yeah,
If it's too bad, we'll dial it in. But either way, it's what we're doing for now. But
yep.
one of the things we
Yeah,
wanted to go ahead, Dave.
I was just gonna say this is literally the first thing that we've recorded,
Yep.
and if as people know with podcasts, radio shows, anything, as you go, you become more dialed in over time. You acclimate to what you're doing a little bit better. It's like a duck in water type of thing.
I don't know. I'm having fun. I think
Oh yeah.
we're gonna do pretty well doing this. But anyways, enough about that. Let's go to what we really wanted to talk about here, which I'm sure we'll have a couple tangents going off here as well. But we'll deal with that when we get there. So I'm sure everybody's seen, and if you haven't, you're about to know now. But it's the anniversary of the last Nitro. It's not today. It's not going to be when we release this, but it was
It
March
was a few
26th.
days back
Yeah,
from when we recorded this, though.
March 2001, and like this is a big deal in a whole bunch of different aspects. Like first off, we were just talking a little bit. Um, about WCW and some of the guys that were there, but some of the best wrestlers ever have wrestled in WCW. A lot of them. There was a lot of interchange between WWF back in the day and WCW with talent. Some guys would start off in Stone Cold didn't start off in WCW, but he was in WCW before he was in WWF, and
Right, a lot of guys made the jump from one
yeah,
one brand to the other in their
I mean
uh,
look at Big
journeys of their
Show.
career.
I mean, who was Mark Calloway, the Undertaker? What was his gimmick
They
in
brought him
WCW?
out as Ian Mark Callis with the skyscrapers. He was tagging with Dan Spivey. They had brought him in to fight the Road Warriors with Dan Spivey because Sid had gotten hurt and was out. And
He was playing
Cornette, of
baseball.
all
Come on.
people, well, I don't know the actual story. He could have been playing baseball then. He could have been hurt. They say that he was hurt, and then there's also a lot of stuff that says that he was playing baseball. I don't know if those things line up or not, but
Yeah.
it entirely possible. But yeah,
Talk
they were
about
looking for
Undertaker.
somebody to replace Sid, and Cornette of all people was like, well, I saw this big old guy. He fits the description of a skyscraper, and then boom, Undertaker was in WCW.
Yeah, Jim's a pretty good talent scout. I mean,
He's got a good eye for wrestling.
we'll talk about the one class and was in Ohio Valley Wrestling. Like Batista and
Lesnar,
yeah,
Cena,
everybody. But but it-
Orton.
yeah, I mean, like we were saying, they're just like Stone Cold, WCW, like Rey Mysterio, Big Show, um,
Triple H,
yeah,
the
Kevin
biggest name in the
Nash,
industry now. Yeah,
yeah, like Kevin Nash's Oz, and
Hall and Nash, the
yeah,
Diamond Stud for Hall.
yeah. I mean DDP, like everybody was over there at one point, but uh,
DDP doesn't get enough credit, I don't think, for helping get Scott Hall dialed in early in his. Like, obviously, we all know what he did for him later in his career, but I think a lot of people don't know that, essentially DDP gave him the Diamond Stud gimmick, which that look is what morphed into Razor Ramon and the look that Scott Hall would use for the entire rest of his career. That's entirely of DDP.
Yeah, it's funny how this worked. Like with one of the shorts that we did too, talked about how Scott Hall, came up with a crow gimmick for Sting. A lot of these guys helped each other back in the day, and they all had good minds for the business because they were driving back and forth together, from city to city to state to town, and sometimes they're putting in these 16-hour trips in between where they're going, and all they're doing is talking about wrestling.
Right?
It's different today. Some people have their own tour buses, like Cody and Alexa, and I'm sure Cena has one with what he's doing right now. But
Oh
that,
yeah.
but that's beyond the point. Like, you know, going back to WCW, it was a huge deal, and that last episode was crazy, considering everything that happened. Um, it,
You knew you were witnessing history when you watched it as a younger person, that the industry was never going to be the same. Even if you were like a teenager, you had the
yeah,
wherewithal to know like nothing is going to be the same again after this.
I don't even think I was a teenager at the time. I think I was 11 years old. I was pretty young. I was just sitting there watching it in my boxers, eating Chef Boyardee pizza out of a pan. How I would do back then. But this was amazing, and I was watching the simulcast part. I was watching Raw, so I was switching back and forth because I heard this was happening, which I wasn't switching back and forth for a while. I started with WCW, then went to WWE, and you'd switch back and forth between it during the peak of this, but WWE had won me over at this time. But they did the simulcast, which we'll get to that when we go over the episode in detail a little bit. But once you saw the split image with Nitro on the left and Raw on the right, you're like, holy shit! Like, I don't think I'm ever going to see anything like this again in my life, and we haven't, and I don't think we ever will. It's a huge deal, and just I I don't know. It's crazy. Your thoughts a little bit, Dave?
Well, a crazy point that I want to point out real quick, and it's related but unrelated. Tony Khan paid more money for Ring of Honor than Vince McMahon paid for WCW. Vince McMahon paid more for sex than he paid for WCW. Like, anyway, sorry, I
Hold
know
on.
that kind of derailed
I'm
us a little
looking.
bit.
No, no. I'm looking this up real quick. So Tony Khan paid. I don't think we know how much he paid for it actually, but it was definitely more than what did he pay $2 million, Vince, for
Yeah,
WCW?
it says here that on Cultaholic Wrestling, thank you Cultaholic for having your news source up for me to find here quickly on Google, that Tony Khan
Quan.
acquired Ring of Honor for less than $4 million.
Well, it's saying here that Vince paid 2.5. Um, the intellectual property, and in addition 1.7 million for the video library, totaling around 4.2. So maybe he actually paid more. You just put it in inflation though, and did
Yeah,
Tony?
if you adjust for inflation.
Yeah. Either way, the ROH purchase, that's a separate topic. Probably the worst wrestling purchase of all time, and the way that he used it has been terrible. And he's basically done the exact opposite of what you want to do there. But let's go back into what we were just talking about, which was WCW. Let's just talk about the episode. I'll let you kind of start this off if you want, and how the episode began.
So I mean, obviously the episode starts off with Vince McMahon,
Yeah,
and he's telling
them
everybody,
hands.
imagine that. It's Vince McMahon on WCW television. How's that supposed to happen? And then he goes on to tell everybody, that he bought WCW. And later in the evening, he's going to address the WCW fans and wrestlers, you know, and everybody's going to kind of find out allegedly what WCW's fate's going to be, and what we all know that it is now. Obviously, after that it was just done. They did the invasion angle, which ended up being a bunch of
I mean,
guys that,
everybody already knew beforehand, but if you're not paying
yeah,
attention to the dirt sheets back then, this would have been your first time hearing.
the invasion was, and I'm sidetracking us again a little bit, but the invasion is one of those things that just didn't pan out the way that fans hoped, because you were looking to get like the big stars of WCW versus the big stars of the WWE, and unfortunately those guys had guaranteed contracts, so they sat out for 2 or 3 years.
I would have did the same
So
thing.
we didn't, yeah, well, yeah, of course you're going to take the money. Why are you going to take like a third less, or a third of the money that you're guaranteed to go out there and maybe get hurt and end your career forever, or any different other number of things?
I don't know. There's two ways of looking at it. You could get more over and take the opportunity, how Vince called it back then, or
Like
just
Booker T did,
yeah, which
because
it
he had
worked
a
out great.
guaranteed contract.
Yeah,
Look at how he ended up.
yeah. I mean, I feel like anybody that had the talent would have made it. But honestly, like after you've been working the past 20 years and somebody offers you a paid vacation for 3 years, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, you're going to sit at home for 3 years and probably get out of shape.
But yeah, it cuts to Tony and Scott, and which are the announcers, commentators, and they're just saying like, "Oh, this happens like 4 or 5 times throughout the show. What are we gonna do? Am I gonna get paid this week? Are we gonna have jobs?" They just keep questioning, and then the later in
Yeah,
the episode, the more desperate that Scott guy sounds, Tony just looks bored and completely checked out. Almost the
yeah.
whole episode.
I honestly had forgotten about Scott Hudson announcing in WCW, because by this time I was kind of much like yourself. I was pretty checked out on him.
Yeah, I
But
wasn't watching WCW much.
I was used to like Tony Schiavone, Mike Tenay, and Bobby the Brain Heenan, or like Tony Schiavone, Mike Tenay, and Mongo McMichael.
hmm Awesome,
Those were the
awesome team.
commentators. Yeah,
Anything with Bobby
even
Heenan was the top of the line. When it came to him, there was nothing better when it came to quality in anything he did in wrestling. As good as it gets.
yeah, he's without question one of the greatest managers of all time. But I'm sure that we'll do something on that at some point. Maybe a list of greatest managers, or we'll think of something to do with managers. But he's definitely in there. Him, Heyman,
His
Cornette,
commentary was legendary, man. Like I didn't realize how good I had it as a kid. Yeah, it was amazing.
Yep, he,
But
he truly was the brain.
yeah,
He had it. He had the brain for the business. He knew what to say. He knew nuances.
I mean, Andre wanted
Um,
him to be his manager for a while, and Andre's choosing who he's working with. Like he when it comes to him having a manager, if he didn't want him there, he wouldn't have been there.
yeah,
And Andre, I feel like had a pretty good judge of character.
and he was one of the biggest stars ever.
Yeah.
So if that dude's telling you that he's good, he knows.
But let's cut back to the episode. We got
Yep.
Rick. He comes out and he's sitting here talking about how like you can't own me, and he just does your typical stuff. He kind of has like a terrible haircut during all this, and it's nothing too
Yeah, it was
crazy.
like a weird kind of spiky haircut.
Yeah, it's
I'm looking at a
strange.
picture of it right now. It's definitely a product of the '90s. That haircut. Uh, yeah, I don't know how else to. His tie, he's wearing a really, really wide tie as well, which I thought was one of the things. I have a note here because I was taking notes when I
Yeah, it,
watched
it
the
is
episode.
weird looking. But
It's a
who are
wide tie.
you? Who are you to tell me that you hold my fate in your hands? Because you haven't sweat, bled, and paid the price like we have. And then he challenges Sting to a match because that's one of his greatest opponents. I think he talked about Ricky Steamboat and a couple other guys that he had some good matches with. But he talks about Sting. That's who he wants to fight for the main event at the end of this episode. And it was a good match. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, I mean,
Y-
and that's a great way to end WCW in general.
That's the
Like,
way, man.
Sting and Flair were like, each other's foil for a very long time, and Flair was one of the guys that originally put Sting over,
Yeah,
early in his career. So
you signed off on them.
for them to end Nitro this way was huge. Yeah, as a kid, seeing this, I was like, yeah, that's the match.
And
Uh,
one real quick, you would have never thought that Sting was the guy that would have not gone to WWE, and for a while he was the guy that never went. And once he got too old, he goes and goes there, works a little bit, has some great matches, gets hurt, retires, disappears for a while, pops up in AEW, and then has this amazing run in AEW, and then has one of the best retirement send-offs that you'll ever see. If you want to talk anything about AEW, their tributes and the way they send people off and the retirements are top notch.
yep, the way that they handled Sting the entire time that he was there was great. Tony Khan basically refused to let him lose. Sting even tried to say that there were
Yeah, he wanted
matches
to
that
lose.
he wanted to lose, and Tony's like, "No, we're not doing that."
Yeah, even that last
And
match, he wanted to lose, and they're like, nope, you're going over. Because in the
that's one
end,
of
it
the
did
things.
help Darby too. I mean, it
Yeah,
put Darby in a position to be like the guy that to Sting's last match, and he got the
I
rub.
respect the hell out of Tony Khan for that kind of stuff. Like that's really good. That
Yeah,
is good business.
yeah. That was in Greensboro. I wish I would have went. I regret not going. I was just, working 6 days a week at that point, and I was just like,
You're
oh man,
tired.
yeah, I'm fucking tired. I don't want to go anywhere. And then Cora was working a lot too, so we decided to stay home. But I could have literally went 20. It would have cost me like $50 after fees for 2 tickets, and it would have been nosebleeds. But it's just the 2 hour ride is the big deal there. And
Yeah.
then after it would have ended at what like 1 a.m. Then I have to drive home and
Yeah,
but
and you're not getting home till like 3:30, and then if you're lucky, you're getting to bed by like 4.
yeah. You want to talk about the Booker T Steiner match?
Yeah, 1 second before we get into that, though, on the notes here, it talks about tonight's sponsors for their final Nitro are, Slim Jim, which obviously
Yeah.
they had been sponsoring
That
WC,
carried over.
1-800 collect, which is hilarious because collect calls aren't a thing anymore. But
No.
I'm sure there's plenty of listeners out there that remember 1-800 collect, and then AOL 6.0. We're
You remember the free
dial up.
trials?
Yeah, I was a poor kid growing up, and I'm sure TJ probably did a lot of the same. You'd go into like the Walmart or the Kmart or whatever, and they'd have those free
Hundreds.
AOL discs that give you the free
Hundreds.
trial, and you just grab like a handful of them so that you could have free internet for the month, because you're a poor kid just trying to get on the computer.
Yep. It worked.
Good
Literally.
times. Yeah, it sure did.
Times got rough. You'd be like, all right, I got 6 days a disc here. It was pretty good. So,
Yeah.
my cousin kind of pissed me off. I went over to his house and they gave him a free year of AOL internet with the computer they purchased. Like, wouldn't that have been nice? You wouldn't have had to mess around with the keys and doing the next CDs. You just got a free year. But AOL was
Yeah.
terrible, and it was bloatware, and it's still around today, and I don't know why anyone would want to use that
Hold
and
on.
browse there.
AOL is still around
Yeah,
now?
but it's not as an ISP. It's as basically I don't know if you remember, but back in the day, you didn't have to use them as an ISP to log into their browser. So you could have had like your own local ISP, but then
Like
you
Net
pay
Zero or something?
yeah, but then you pay AOL to log in uh, to the internet. Like obviously again you're not using them as an ISP. I'm explaining this kind of weird because it is weird, but and you just log in to their shit and you pay them like $20 a month to play their little games and have their browser. You remember that
Right.
little whole thing? So
They
and it
had their
was
Flash games and
yeah,
the AOL chat
it was
rooms.
bloatware. It was terrible. It was the slowest browser ever. Back in the day, these computers had no memory, and then that browser would use up all the fucking memory. So then, if you have like more than one tab open, or they weren't tabs back in the day, but more than one window, you're fucked. It was terrible. But if you're a kid, you don't know anything about dial-up. You don't know anything about these slow computers. You have a great experience, and you should feel very lucky to have the technology that you have today because we went through the terrible times of having all this stupid, terrible tech that was very slow. But that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. Another tangent. But um, WCW U.S. title match, world title match, Booker T and Scott Hall with Madeja.
Scott Steiner.
What did I say?
Hall. It would have been cool if they had Scott Hall on this
As the world
episode, but
champion.
yeah, that's something we'll touch on at some point too. Is a bunch
That was
of
in a short.
there's already a short out there that of the guys that were great wrestlers that never had the belt that maybe should have. But so there was the match like we were talking about. It was title versus title. Scott
5 minutes
Steiner is
long.
the heavyweight champion, and Booker T was the U.S. champion. I lost my train of thought there for a second for some reason.
It's gonna happen.
And the match was pretty good. It was a relatively all the matches on this card were relatively short. You got like 5 minute, six
They
minute
had a lot to
matches.
do.
Some of them are short as a minute and a half. But the match was pretty strong. They had good back and forth. Neither wrestler really looked bad. They put on a good, entertaining match. Steiner
Steiner
mocked
was hurt here.
BVE a bit for the match. Yeah, that's right.
I
Didn't
think
he
he was
have
having
like the
back
rib thing,
problems.
or was
I'm
this
not
the?
100% sure. We'll have to look that up if we want to talk about it again. But
He had
he
the
wasn't
foot
doing
thing
good.
too, where
He
his
said he
foot
should
was he
not
couldn't
have
feel
wrestled
foot.
this match because it hurt him more.
Oh no, I didn't know that.
Yeah, like, Scott's the man. He's going to go out there and he's going to do what he's going to do. If he tells you he's going to be there, he's going to be there. All these guys were
Yeah,
like that.
he has had a reputation for being hard to work with, but in this instance, he did the right thing
He
more
would always
often
do
than
what's
not.
right,
Yeah,
unless you're Ric
he
Flair.
just you were gonna hear his opinion at first though.
It's funny. One of Booker T's moves is a ghetto blaster. He wasn't using that earlier in his career, and if he was, it was not called that. And then the flapjack, and he always had the Harlem sidekick, the spinneroonie. I don't know. Booker T's great. His moves were awesome. He could move pretty good for a guy his size. But like you said, this was an alright match. It wasn't anything too crazy, But I mean, they both guys had a good showing, and the reason why they put the belt on Booker T was because Scott wasn't going over. Like we were just talking about, he was taking the guaranteed money and sitting at home. They offered him less money. He didn't take it, and he was beat up anyways. So the best option was for him to disappear for a while. And his run later when he did go to WWE was terrible. But his debut was awesome. He got one of the biggest pops from any of the WCW guys when they came over. And if they would have used him right, he could have been one of their top guys. He could talk really well. I don't
Yeah.
know if really well was the way to describe it, but he could talk, and he
He
just had
had
this aura about.
entertaining promos.
Yeah, he was as a child, he was one of my favorite wrestlers. I saw him from his early days with his brother, and he could do stuff in the ring that a guy people today still can't do the stuff that he could do back then. He was a
Yeah, you had a big
powerhouse.
300-pound guy doing like Frankensteiners off the top rope and stuff. It was insane.
Yeah, and not a Hurricane Rana, by the way. But
That's right.
yeah, he was the man, and when he came back as a heel after him and his brother had split, and he kind of had the whose beard was that he had that Hogan ripped off, where he got that look from. It's like right in the
Uh, It's
the
escaping me.
yeah, same here. We'll figure that out later. But anyways, he ripped off the beard look, and he came back with the bleached hair, and he was basically a pimp. Was his gimmick, and
The big booty daddy, yeah.
yeah, and he just came out and he would just talk about having sex with women and just ridiculous stuff. And I don't know, I was all about it as a kid. And the thing is like I'm not the smartest guy in the world now, and I definitely wasn't the smartest kid in the world. I could play video games pretty good, and I'm basically the same guy now. But I didn't understand any of this stuff because I'm a kid, and I was just enjoying the entertainment aspect of a charismatic guy out there putting on these good matches, and just somebody that I have invested years of watching. But beyond that, it cuts to like some kind of WCW Spring Break segment hosted by Ricky Ratface. I have no idea who that is.
Oh,
No, it's Ricky
that's
Ratchman.
Ricky Ratman. Sorry for another tangent, folks. Ricky Rackman used to host a show on MTV when I was a kid called Headbangers Ball. It used to come on
I,
at
I
midnight.
remember that. I didn't
This
know
in
that
the
was
80s.
him.
Yeah, so he used to be like the VJ. He was the guy that would interview the bands and introduce the videos. This is the new video from Metallica called One, stuff like that. And he did that for a really long time. And he went on to do other things beyond that. And then obviously he was on WCW a few times there at the end. Circling back to Steiner real quick. Um, man, after WWE, he ended up in TNA and did some of his best work.
Yeah,
His in-ring work was great, and this is after he had
one of the
had all
best
these
promos of
injuries.
all time over there.
It's where he cut the Steiner Math promo on Samoa Joe. That's right. He got a bunch of young talent over. Dudes like Joe and AJ, who are huge names in the industry now, and were even big names then, but they were still early on in their career, and Steiner was an established big name.
Yeah. Uh,
Oh, and we didn't even tell everybody who won that match because we got sidetracked. Booker T ended
I,
up winning.
I did. I said that they ended up going with Booker T because
Oh,
Scott
that's
wasn't
right.
going over, remember? But yeah, Booker T
Right,
did.
that is true.
Maybe I didn't say the exact words that Booker T was going, but I implied the winner by that. But yeah, Booker T won, and then he went over there, and didn't he feud with The Rock, or is that not what they had him do?
He I don't know that he immediately feuded with The Rock,
He
but
did
he
with Stone
he
Cold.
feuded with The Rock. He feuded with Stone Cold Steve Austin. He was wildly successful in the WWE. He
Yeah,
went through gimmick revisions. Like he
yeah, King
always
Booker.
did a
He was
great
there for a
job.
while.
Yeah,
He still works there.
he could do comedy. He could do serious. He could do tough. He could do like the chicken shit heel stuff. He literally could do it all. So he
Yeah,
was a good
except
signing.
good commentary, which
Right.
is what he's
And
doing now.
we were talking about you don't watch NXT. I usually watch NXT, and
Has
I
he gotten
opt to
better?
skip AEW. I mean, it's Booker T out there doing commentary. I'm not going to crap all over him, but
Remember that shucky ducky quack quack shit that he would talk about
he
in the
he
pre-shows
he
for the
still
pay-per-views?
he still uses that,
That's terrible.
when some of the gals come out.
I tell you this,
Um,
he has his own wrestling promotion. I forget what it's called, and he's still wrestling matches occasionally. He's teaching guys. He's given back to wrestling. He's been in a little bit of controversy lately because like he didn't do like some guy that he was with had like some legal troubles, and apparently they're like not great. And then Booker T's like, oh, I'm sorry, I don't do a background check on the 12,000 people or the 1,200 people that I encounter in a week.
well, I mean, also, if you were to do a background check on Booker T, I mean, he went to
Yeah,
jail for armed robbery and stuff. So he's one of those dudes that turned
people
his
make
life around.
mistakes. You know,
Yeah,
it's just a part
exactly.
of life.
And he's the last person that's going to judge some of these people that have messed up in the past. He'll be the first person to give him a chance, probably.
The
Oh,
easiest
and
thing you can
his
do is judge somebody without knowing them.
exactly his reality of wrestling is his promotion.
Yeah, and he does a good job. He's did Swerve come from there? No, I don't think so. I know of some talents that I not anymore because I can't remember anything ever. But I know that there's some good talents that have come from there that work in WWE now. And I don't know, Booker T's a good guy. I've never heard
Oh yeah.
anybody say anything bad about him. He's a legit tough guy too. He's got some street fighting experience from what I've heard. I,
Well,
I I'm pretty sure he's gotten in
you
fights with people in the back.
he whipped Batista
Oh, that's right.
back in the day.
That's right. And Batista's like had an MMA career. Like he's a tough guy, you know. Like this was
Right, it's
before
not
he
like he's
probably
a
had that.
pushover.
Yes, this is probably before he had that professional stuff. But it's like, I tell you, I'm not fighting Batista, even if I'm the same size as him. It's like, look at that guy. Like
I'm
it, like
not fighting Batista now, and
yeah, he lost about 75 pounds. He still looks terrifying, man. It wouldn't take him much to beat me up.
everyone's like, "Oh, he's small," and it's like, dude, he's still like 250 in shape pounds. He just looks small because you're used to him being like 300 and something pounds.
But let's move on with the episode here. Um,
Yeah.
it cuts back into Vince, and sorry, I'm getting a call. Hopefully you can't hear it, but it cuts into
Oh,
Vince,
okay.
and he's talking to his attorney on the phone, and he's saying he can't. This is probably my favorite thing from the whole episode. And Vince is saying that he can't believe that they chose some redneck beer joint in Florida Panhandle for their final episode, but he calls it appropriate, which is
I mean,
funny.
he's not wrong. WCW definitely ran some venues that
Yeah,
were what he would describe is what he said there, but I don't know. I feel like that added to the charm. I used to go to the Tampa Armory and go to wrestling when I was a kid.
I like the
In the
look.
build,
It's unique.
yeah, the building didn't have air conditioning. Everybody's smoking cigarettes in there. The building stunk, but there was something about that atmosphere that just and a lot of the smaller venues that they built or that they ran the show at kind of reminded me of that Armory style deal.
Yeah. I don't know. I liked it. I always thought that it looked cool anytime they went there. You know, They had a lot of unique different venues. They're the only wrestling organization that I remember seeing that had a pool by any of their stuff. It's
Right, at Club La Vila when they would do it at what the hell is the name of that place in Florida? I live here, for God's
I
sakes.
know it's not a big deal.
Yeah,
We'll move on to the next match, cruiserweight
yeah.
tag title. Which is funny. I was gonna do a short on this. This is the only defense that this title ever had. I'm pretty sure. Um, think
I
about
think
it.
there was like 2 or 3 matches total, and that's counting the tournament for the for the belts.
Yeah, Ray and Kidman won. Um, and this actually, sorry, this was a contender match. This wasn't the actual championship match. So I'm not sure if this is even like they had the belt out yet. Because again, I can't ever remember anything, and this match wasn't very memorable. They got all their stuff in. It was all right. Who was it against? The Filthy Animals, Rey Mysterio, Billy Kidman, and Shannon Moore and Evan Carrigan.
Evan Courageous,
Yeah, versus the Young Dragons.
the
That's a
the
lot of
young
guys.
dragons. Yeah, that's six guys.
I don't remember most of these guys. I know Rey Mysterio and Billy Kidman. I don't know who the Filthy Animals are. Shannon Moore. That sounds
Well, the
familiar.
Filthy Animals were Rey Mysterio and Kidman. That
Oh,
was
that's
their
their
tag
name.
team.
Man,
Yeah,
this
they had like a group.
this shows you how much this episode stuck because we watched it the other day. That shows you how much
Yeah.
this match stuck in my brain. Not much. And it was, like I said, only 3 minutes and 38 seconds. So do you just want to move on to the next thing, or you got anything to say about
Well,
this?
I got a little bit of notes. Yeah, obviously, like you talked about, the match was largely a spot fest. All the dudes got their shit in. One of the things that I noted here from when we watched it the other day was that you had forgotten that Ray had been unmasked for a while prior to
Yeah,
this. So you were surprised to see Ray unmasked. Um, Ray is still like just a week or two ago wrestling in the WWE. He's a Hall of Famer, dude's probably the most successful luchador of all time.
he is. I mean, I think anybody will agree that he's the best ever. At least when it comes to any kind of modern kind of stuff, there's nobody better. Nobody's drawn more money. Nobody's put more asses in seats. Nobody's had the run that he's had with the amount of time he's had. Because there was a while where he just kept getting hurt, and that was
He's
like
the
15 years ago. And you thought that he was done then, and here we
the
are.
dude is like the Mexican Undertaker from the standpoint of he's been wrestling since the early 90s and is still doing it at a high level in the twilight of his career.
Yeah, he's the man.
Um, Hall of Famer in 2023. I mean, Kidman ended up in WWE. He had a all right, lower mid card run. He still is there as a producer today.
If Kidman was wrestling today, he would be a top talent. But there was never
Yeah,
going to be a world where Vince was going to allow him to be anybody in that company because he was from
he,
WCW. He had no charisma, and he was a small guy.
he would be a guy that would work really well in the modern AEW
That's what I
system
meant. Yeah,
because
he'd
he
have
could
a
just showcase his in-ring ability was fire. He was really good cruiserweight.
and the thing about it is he could sell better than anybody these days. Like he could sell like a motherfucker, man. Like you thought that guy was dead when like somebody like drop kicked him or like somebody
Yeah.
hit him from something on the top rope or he missed. Like he was good and he he would definitely be a good talent today.
And then Shannon Moore was a guy that he didn't really do so great in WWE. He kind of floundered a bit. He did end up in TNA, which is more where I remember him from in his post WCW run. He kind of was like a punk goth dude in TNA.
Yeah, he looked terrible.
He had like that weird spiky
Yeah.
haircut. He was never a top of the card guy though in any of the organizations.
Would you
And
want to
then the
put like your brand on this guy?
I mean maybe like X Division or something, but I
Yeah.
mean yeah, it's. And then the Young Dragon guys, the Kaz Hayashi guy only made one appearance in the WWE, and it was during the Invasion angle. That was it. You never heard about him again. They never mentioned it again. I don't know if there was like a backstage thing or these things just didn't work out. Sometimes that happens. And then the other guy from the Young Dragons, you'll remember this when I say his name. Obviously, Jamie San doesn't sound super familiar to
Was it
most
Jamie
folks.
Noble?
No, he ended up in WWE for a long time, and he was Jimmy Wang Yang, which I'm sure a lot of people will remember that. He wasn't super over as that, but that name always stuck with me, the Jimmy Wang Yang. I
Wang.
remember seeing him a lot. And he was a producer there, I think until like 2021, 2022, something like that. So he ended up parlaying that into a fairly successful career in the industry, even post in ring.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys that do that have talents in other parts of the industry that stay in it forever. You know, Michael P.S. Hayes, he's never going to go away, right?
Old Freebird, he'll be there till he dies.
Well, they actually got rid of him wrestling way earlier than they should have. He still probably had like 10 years to go, but
Yeah, I
back
mean,
in the
when
day,
we were
guys
seeing
didn't go
him,
into their 50s.
yeah, when we were seeing him as Doc Hendricks in the WWF in the 90s, he probably could have still been working then. I remember when he came out with the Hardys and he was dressed like the Hardys.
Yeah,
He's wearing like the pants and everything.
that was like besides the Stone Cold the 316 thing, the King of the Ring promo. I think that was my first time really having Michael stick out to me, and it's just like, man, this guy looks terrible. That
Yeah,
wasn't his style.
he needed to probably hit the gym a little bit too. But a lot of those guys back then probably, we didn't have the modern science behind working out and eating that the guys have now.
And the nice modern steroids that these guys take.
Right, these dudes are on like the designer HGH and stuff now.
Yeah, I probably would be too if I was on TV and wanting to look my
Yeah, I
best.
mean, if my job was to be a big, jacked guy with a super nice physique, I would probably do what I had to do to make that happen. Uh,
Hey,
while also trying to not risk my health as much as possible, because
hey, this is all stuff prescribed by doctors most of the time. Like, this isn't illegal. Like, almost all these guys aren't doing anything illegal these days. They just get doctors that will sign off on this stuff for them, and they're being monitored. There's nothing unsafe
right,
about what these guys are doing, I don't believe. Like, let's put it this way: compared to what they used to do back in the day, it's night and day. Like, the Rock's not taking any illegal supplements, you know. Like, he just has the money to pay for the good shit, and he has high-end doctors, and he can go to other countries if he needs to. You know, he's
yep.
but that's completely has nothing to do with what we're talking about.
Yeah, another tangent for you folks.
That's fine.
Then there was the third match though, which was the cruiserweight title match that had Shane Helms
Hold on.
versus.
Skip back a second. So we actually had
Okay.
the little thing with Trish and Vince that
Oh
happened in
yeah.
between this, and it's funny because she comes in and she says she wants to celebrate. She's got wine, and they're about to do all that. They want to celebrate the purchase of WCW. Vince knows a better way to celebrate. We were just talking about him doing this, so he makes out with her. They kind of have it angled, so I don't know if they're kissing, but I have a pretty good idea that this did happen, and everybody else was so grossed out by it that the cameraman angled it so you couldn't see as well. But Vince is a creep. This is terrible. I was a kid, and this stuff made me feel uncomfortable. You know, Vince is.
Also though, you can't fault the guy for making out with Trish Stratus given the opportunity.
I get that, but
I'm not saying it's good or
she's
great, but
beautiful. You know what I mean? And
oh yeah,
she's super smart. She seems like an all around great person. I don't know her, but I've never seen anybody say anything bad about her. Um,
right. You're not hearing that she's like a toxic bitch backstage or anything like that ever. You
they're
always
bringing her
hear
back
pop.
today, and they wouldn't be bringing her back today if she wasn't easy and good to work with. Um,
Right.
but beyond that, it still stands. Vince is a creep, um, and it just got weirder over the years. And I hope that he's happy in life and isn't as much of a creep today. And I'll just leave it as that. But go ahead and cut back to the match that you were about to go to.
Sorry, I'm still giggling about the Vince stuff you were saying. So anyway, the third match of the night was a cruiserweight title match, which was Shane Helms as the champ versus Chavo Guerrero Jr.
We both know these guys.
And this was a pretty good match. It
Yeah, for
wasn't
four
very long.
minutes.
Yeah, these dudes got their shit in a 4 minute match. The finishing move that Shane Helms was using at the time
Yeah,
was
it's
the
awesome.
vertebraker. And bro, I hate to say bro and sound like Vince
Who
Russo, but
cares?
he literally, it's one of the most perfectly executed vertebreakers that I've ever seen. And if people want to do that move,
Yeah, watch this guy.
this is literally the match to watch to see how to execute the match or execute the move so that it looks entirely devastating, but is done completely safely. Because the vertebreaker is a very dangerous move that most promotions have said we're not doing that anymore.
Yeah.
So to be able to hit one of those, it looked devastating, and you not hurt the guy is huge. Um, I don't really know a lot to say about the match beyond that. Shane ended up going on after WCW, had a pretty successful career in
Man,
the WWE mid card as the Hurricane.
that was
Everybody
awesome.
loved the Hurricane.
This,
He
this,
had great backstage interactions with The Rock, all the top stars.
they're on YouTube
He
now. They're worth watching.
yeah. He ended up going to TNA for a bit. I don't remember as much about his run there.
You watch more
But
TNA than I did. I didn't watch it much. I just watched it here and there, and then we'll kind of keep up with YouTube clips on guys I liked. I don't know
yeah,
anything about his TNA run, but I know his WWE stuff. I always find highly entertaining. WWE has probably done the better comedy in wrestling than any other company ever, and they were doing some good stuff around that time. Not all of it, but I just remember the tiny ding-a-ling thing with The Rock, with him hiding in his locker room in the match, and it was just all some really good stuff. When you can hang with The Rock on the mic, and The Rock's letting you do it, because The Rock refused to work with plenty of guys back in the day. And what are you going to do? Tell The Rock no?
yeah.
You know,
And I mean, even to this day, Hurricane is still a producer at the WWE. So I mean, he parlayed that into a pretty long, well
you don't
executed
stay in the
career.
system if people don't like you. You
Right.
know?
Or if you're doing a bad job, or if
Yeah.
you're a moron, like they'll get rid of you. They don't need to keep you.
They will definitely get rid of you. That's been proven.
And then, of course, Chavo went on to be very successful post WCW and WWE and TNA. He even did some stuff in AEW with
That didn't last very
Andrade.
long.
Yeah, well, at the time he was working with he was doing stuff with Young Rock
Was
for
he?
that show.
Okay.
Yeah, he helped coordinate the wrestling and stuff on that show. He was one of
Man, that's
he was
awesome.
called he was called a producer, but I don't think that it was the standard producer role.
Yeah.
He was more helping make sure that the wrestling stuff looked accurate.
Well, I
So
mean,
that was really cool.
he doesn't like Tony Khan. I know that. I saw him talking all kinds of crap on him afterwards. But there's nothing wrong with that. How many jobs have you had or worked for somebody where you've only worked with them a couple times where you didn't like the person? I don't think it's anything personal. You just like, man, I didn't like working there, and just
Yeah,
it's easy to express that these days when you have a platform like Twitter. Just most of us don't go on work and shit on our bosses, right?
yeah.
But anyways,
Also, it's
go ahead.
pretty brave of him to publicly make comments like that.
Yeah, he doesn't
I
give a.
mean, he doesn't need a job there at this point anyhow. But
Well, why wouldn't you want it though? He'll pay you.
yeah,
You know,
I mean,
you can't say those checks aren't cash in there over in AEW.
right. It's not like promoters back in the day where they'd give you a bunk check or something.
Yeah,
Um,
it's gonna
so
cash.
yeah. But anyway, after the match had ended, Booker T. They had like a little backstage thing with Booker T, and he had some comments about winning the match and getting the title in his future. And he had some mixed emotions about becoming the heavyweight champ and the U.S. champion one night. This may be the end of a chapter, but there are a lot of pages left in this book, which is a good reference to make Booker T book. Just little stuff like that always catches fans. And then he tells everybody that he's going to prove that he's the best to every sucker, like he always does.
Booker T's the man. It wasn't a bad promo. Um,
No, he did well. He didn't
yeah,
know what the future held. He was, it felt like this was a genuine from the heart
yeah, for
type of
sure.
deal.
I don't think anybody wrote this for him, and
No,
both belts look cool on him. And then he eventually went over to WWE and had a great career, like we said. And I don't think there's really anything more to say about it. Just a nice little promo. Then it cuts to Team Canada coming out asking for a title shot, which that was Lance Storm and who else? But
Mike Awesome,
yeah, that's right.
legendary ECW
Yep.
wrestler Mike Awesome.
Who looks great. Uh, is in great shape. But anyways, Storm has like no personality. He's terrible on the mic. Anytime he talks, it's like a robot. But he's a great talent, and he's always been really good in the ring. And um,
He would have been a great an AEW guy
yeah,
because his in-ring work was so good.
he's working in the back somewhere, isn't he? Or I think no, I think Lance works with like the Figure Four wrestling guys and does some podcasts and stuff. I'm not sure. I don't keep up with him at all. Like no offense to him, he kind of a forgettable guy, right? It's not like he was like
Yeah,
very prominent in anything that was going on. But
I think he was working as a producer at TNA for a while, like in the 2010s, maybe like later than that. And then he did some stuff in WWE as a producer, and then I think it was one of those things that they got rid of him during the COVID cutbacks. And then I'm pretty sure that he's in TNA now as a producer.
hopefully, uh, uh, there's no way that he wouldn't be good at setting stuff up. He has a mind for the business, I would think.
Yeah.
He's always technical, and usually those technical wrestlers understand a lot about the business. But we go back after that. Before the match starts, I guess they went to commercial, right? And then Michael Cole comes back, and he's in Vince's locker room. You know, we got Trish and him in there, and Vince doesn't look too happy. Um, he's talking about some wrestlers that may never compete again, and WCW fans that worry that their brand of sports entertainment will go away. Um, Basically, nothing crazy here. Um, Michael Cole looks nervous. He was kind of a dipshit back in the day in any of these little interviews. He was just a dweeb, you know.
I
It's
think that was purposely done.
yeah,
They
same
kind of
here.
wanted
He's
to
not like
darken
that
him up a
now.
little bit.
He's
No,
awesome now. Since Vince got out of there, he does really good. But
he's one of the greatest commentators of all time, definitely.
I don't know. Sorry, I spaced out there a little bit. It's just like it's the same stuff. Like it's like Trish sitting there saying like, "I like it when you're forceful to Vince," and it's like, oh man, like this is just more creepy stuff. And then they do a little toast, and Tony and Scott are sitting there worrying about their jobs again. Like I said, this happens over and over again. But you want to talk about the match? It's about to pop up. It's a tag team title match between Chuck Palumbo, Sean O'Haire, and then Team Canada, which was Lance Storm and Mike Awesome, like we were just saying.
um, I talk about how I was making notes for these
Did you not make one
matches.
for this?
I did, but
Okay.
it's very, very short notes, and people are going to think that this is funny or it's going to upset people. And my note for this match was that it was better than most AEW matches.
Oh no. Is that it?
Yeah, and then my other notes about the guys in general were like most of these guys didn't do much in WWE past the invasion angle. Lance Storm stuck around for a while and is a producer in TNA currently. The other guys were pretty much gone. Mike Awesome came back when they did the ECW One Night Stand in 2005, and he got a really good reaction from the crowd because the ECW crowd they love Mike Awesome.
Let me put it to
But
you this way,
other
though,
than that,
Dave. And go right back to what you're talking about after this. The highlight of these guys for me, and I think a lot of people, was the segment where Stone Cold came back from being a heel, and uh, there were a whole bunch of like WCW and ECW guys beating up on the WWF guys when they came back in the big invasion where they had like remember they were all fighting in the back and Stone Cold comes back
oh,
and is beating them with the lead pipe, making his way to
this
the
is like
ring, and they
the
clear out the
biggest pop
ring.
of all
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
Is
but
that the one? Yeah,
I'm saying that's the best thing that these guys were ever involved in WWE. Because Stone Cold, I'm
getting
pretty
their
sure beat
ass
these
whipped
guys
by
with the
Stone
pipe.
Cold.
Yeah, and then
Yeah,
or was it a pull, a pull
he
cue
had
or
some
whatever?
some kind of
I
object
think it was
that
a
he
pull
was whipping
stick.
their asses with. Yeah.
But go back to what you were talking about.
I
That
mean,
was
that was really
funny.
it. There was
It
just
was
the
nothing
the
crazy.
small amount of but yeah, better than most AEW matches was about the nicest thing that I could say about that match.
3 minutes and 21 seconds.
Yeah, it was
Um,
really short. The dudes got their shit in. Uh, it was a match.
I got a question for you here. So we cut to the next thing, and Stacy Keibler comes out and she introduces the Sean and Stacy show. She talks a little bit. I don't remember her talking very much. Did she go to WWE after this, or was she in WWE and then went to WCW, then back to WWE?
She ended up in WWE after this.
Okay,
Her and Tori Wilson were what
they were
I'll
the
refer
girls.
to as WCW homegrown talents that ended up in the WWE that actually managed to get themselves over.
And Stacy was fucking hot, man. Like,
Yeah, I mean, legs for
remember
days.
that statue they
Uh,
had
yep.
of her behind? I'm not trying to get too bad
Yeah.
there, but I'm acting like Vince here, I guess. But no, she was with the Dudley Boys. She was a whole bunch of people. She was with Scott Steiner for a bit. Um, but anyways, it was just a tattoo match, Sean Stasiak and Bam Bam Bigelow, right? And uh, Sean Stasiak won, and the whole stipulation was if Sean lost, he was going to get the tattoo. So they didn't even follow up on the stipulation of the match. So they
Right.
had a
There was
1 minute and 23-second match with a stipulation that never happened.
yeah, well, exactly. That's kind of what my notes said. Like, it's like the first part's like Stacy Keibler was and is so hot.
Yeah, she still
Match is
is.
super short, less than a minute 30. The entrances took longer than the match itself. Also, we didn't get the payoff of somebody being tattooed for the match. It was the entire stipulation of the match. The match was forgettable at best and was easily the worst match of the night. Like, it just is what it is.
But the highlight was Stacy, so at least we got to see her, right?
Right. And she actually, this is one of those ones that I did some notes here. Let's see. Stacy went on to be very successful in the WWE. Obviously, we all know about that. This was actually Bam Bam's final appearance for any major promotion. He
Wow.
wrestled like some independent stuff until he died in 2006.
He was a
And then,
big
so
deal
that,
for a little bit.
yeah, this was kind of his last hurrah in the industry, and it was a minute 30.
That
So,
sucks.
for Bam Bam, that kind of sucks. I think Stasiak was in WWE for like a year, maybe give or take, and then he was independence for a while, and
Yeah.
he's a chiropractor now, which
Good for him.
that's a good industry for former wrestlers to be in. They know a lot
Strong.
about having messed up bodies and stuff. So,
Yeah.
what better profession to go into than being a chiropractor?
I'm glad he's doing good for himself. A
Yeah,
lot of these guys are smart. It's just they were doing what they wanted to do and loved to do, and they were making more money back then doing anything else they were going to do. It's just you have a shelf life.
yeah.
I'm glad, but we'll move back onto the show, and it's Regal coming out showing Vince's jersey. Vince has already seen it. Vince was kind of like a really big douchebag at this time, and William Regal's awesome. Anything he did was really good. He was always funny. He was kind of a comedy character at this point, but he's just telling Vince he hopes he doesn't get himself in trouble. Um, Basically because he says WCW's an awful place, and he just thinks that Vince is maybe messing up buying it. And I don't know, Vince is fine, and he thanks him for his concern, but tells him he's fine. Then it just cuts to a DDP promo afterwards. Um, DDP's awesome. He quotes the Grateful Dead. What a long straight trip it's been. Um, Nothing too much. DDP was always a really good promo. Um, just more the usual stuff, talking about um, the fans and talking about the promoters don't decide who's over or not, and just thanking the fans, and cuts to another little promo after that, more of a package, talking about the NWA and WCW, and I don't know. Got the cruiserweight title match after that, but anything on those promos that you wanted to talk about? They weren't anything too crazy. I was kind of
Well,
glossing over them.
yeah. The circling back to the DDP, man, Page. Unless people were around and watching wrestling at the time, they don't understand how over DDP really was. Like, he was one of the top guys in WCW, and
He
he
did
was
it
in
at an
his
older
late
age,
30s
yeah.
at this point. Yeah, he didn't really get to begin his in-ring career until he was like 35, and that's like unheard of. Um,
Yeah,
just
especially back then.
at any point in wrestling history, that's kind of unheard of.
Yeah,
And he did it, and he got over. And then
I was a
when he
big
got to
fan.
the WWE, he was not used very well. And he
He's
talks
stalked
about
the
that
Undertaker's wife.
he regrets not having more balls and telling Vince McMahon, no, in respects to the pitch that he was given. He wanted to do things like the real people's champ, him versus The Rock, because in WCW, DDP was calling himself the people's champ. Actually, before The Rock was even calling himself the people's champ in the WWE, so that
Vince
was like
wasn't
a
gonna
natural.
Vince wasn't gonna let any of these guys be on the same level as his top guys.
No, he was always going to bury them, which is
He's petty.
unfortunate because you yeah, he always talks about that, like, he'll do things that are good for business or best for business, but
But it is a control
the
thing.
way that he handled all these WCW guys, it was kind of just like, well, you beat us for 83 weeks, so now we're going to bury you.
He hires guys back that quit just to control him, usually,
Yep.
and then tries to
It,
stage it in a way that makes it seem like he's the good guy.
it's a really weird dynamic that he tries to do to everybody with that kind of stuff. It's like a power move, I guess, you know.
Yeah. Going back to the show, how it had that little promo video package from NWA and WCW after Paige's promo.
Yeah.
It goes back to Tony and what's the other guy?
Scott Hudson.
Scott, yeah, sitting there talking about their jobs and complaining again, where they're going to have a paycheck and what are we going to do next week. They literally just keep doing this during this whole thing. They sound like fucking like whiners. They have guaranteed contracts too, I'm pretty sure. If I'm not right about that, I'd like to be corrected. But they're sitting there like they have a problem with this, what Steven Regal was saying. We're calling like WCW a truly awful place, which is funny. Steven Regal was the man. But
Yeah, I mean, he would know. He had enough firsthand knowledge for how many years he was there.
yeah. Tony Schiavone throughout the last, I feel like a year of WCW was completely checked out, and he looked bummed out. He had no interest in the product, and he was just there. You remember that?
Yeah, he was essentially just collecting a paycheck,
I
kind
would
of
have
doing the
collected it
best
too.
that he could with what they were giving him.
Yeah.
But I mean, the product was so bad by this point that it would be probably hard to not be checked out a little bit.
But yeah, we got the Cruiserweight Tag Title match. Like I said, I'm pretty sure this is the first time this thing's ever been defended. Um, I could be wrong. This might even be like the I don't think this is the debut where, yeah, uh, Alex
Well,
Skipper and Kid Romeo were the champions. So,
yeah, they had won it previously, I believe, and then
but this is the
that
first match after that. Like it got
correct.
won, and then this is the only time that they actually ever had a defense or another match beyond the first time of it being won. But it was good. I mean, anything with Rey Mysterio in it's going to be good, and Billy Kidman's great. They all got their shit in. 4 minutes and 43 seconds. Rey and Kidman won. What do you think?
Pretty much the same thing that you said there. It was an entertaining match. All the dudes got their shit in. It was super smart to have Ray and Billy win the belts. It was a good fan service moment on the way out.
WWE wanted Rey, and they put
Yeah,
that mask right back on him once he showed back over there. That
yeah. He was surprised that they wanted to have him back with the mask, and
he has
they
the
knew that it was such a marketing tool.
he has the highest percentage. Like you know how like you get a cut of your merch and WWE gets a cut, and a lot of times the
Yeah,
the, the percentage you get's pretty small. Well, that's not the case here. He has the highest out of anybody ever, and it's just because that mask.
really.
I think it's 35%. I could be wrong, but that's astronomical compared to
That's
anybody
crazy.
else. He even has more of a percentage than Stone Cold. Just Stone Cold selling way more shit, so obviously he's
Yeah.
making more money. But um, fun match.
I mean,
Uh,
yeah.
everybody's good. What were you gonna say?
Well, I was just gonna say, Stone Cold hasn't really been a wrestler for, like
Yeah,
20 years,
he's
and
making
he's
more money
still
on
moving
merch than
the
Ray
level of
is.
merchandise. Rey Mysterio still moves a lot of merch and is still
Yeah,
going though, which is wild.
just the Stone
Um,
Cold shirt's an untouchable aspect of wrestling. Like
yeah,
wrestling could
I feel
die
like,
and people would still be buying that shirt.
yeah, our whole lives will, till we die probably, we'll be seeing Stone Cold and NWO shirts at wrestling events.
Yeah, 100%. WWE's not going to stop selling these shirts.
Oh, why
They're
would
going if they can, they're going to be parading Stone Cold out there in a fucking wheelchair. Like,
they?
remember, didn't they do that with Freddie Blassie and Stone Cold? Like, was like the one like wheeling him around and shit. Or am I remembering that incorrectly?
I do remember seeing old Freddie Blassie out there in a wheelchair. I can't recall who was wheelchairing him around though.
But anyways, Sting's in a room with a whole bunch of bats hanging. I wonder how long that took. Whoever hung him. The Stinger's back. I think he was been gone for a while. Before
At
this, I
this
don't know.
point, he had been gone since November of the previous year.
Okay,
So he had
just
been
collecting
gone
that
for a
check.
while. I don't know if he was hurt. They didn't have story for him, which I find hard to believe. Sting is
Yeah,
your
it's Sting.
biggest star, but it's I always thought that was kind of weird that he was out for such a long time. It probably had to have been an injury. They never really in all of the reporting, like I did a little bit of research for this going back, and I could never find any reason as to why he was out for that period of time.
They didn't go over the injury stuff as much in WCW as they would have in WWE back in the day.
Yeah.
Like sometimes guys would just disappear and just pop back up. But yeah, he's talking about Rick, and he says he's gonna have one more match with Rick. They started it years ago, and they're gonna end it tonight. As for the fans wondering about his future, well, you know about that. The only thing for sure about Sting is nothing's for sure, and it's showtime, right? Um,
And Sting is so good, and this was like a
yeah.
classic Sting promo. He had to just go out there and hit the usual Stingisms, and he was good.
Oh, I mean that's everybody's got their shit, right? It's just Sting was the man, Steve
Yep.
Bourdain, right? But
Yep. Well, everybody talks about, oh, this dude's got five moves. Sting was pretty much a five move dude. The Stinger Splash, Scorpion Death Drop, Scorpion
yeah, he was
Deathlock.
just over.
Yeah.
But we get another AOL 6.0 commercial. Like, AOL wasn't out for that long at that point. How the fuck do you have six versions? Like,
I mean, I guess it was just like think of it like video game patches. Like, oh, there were some bugs, so we had to patch out the bugs. So we went from 5.0 to 6.0. I'm just guessing. I have no idea how they actually operated their business, but that'd be my best guess.
everybody gets
Revisions.
on ads these days, but man, ads were in your face back in the day, man. They just like kept hitting you and hitting you and hitting you and hitting you. Like AOL was everywhere back in the day. I fucking hated it. Like you go over to somebody's
Even
house and they got
though,
AOL, you just fuck, man, I don't want anything to do with this.
yeah, even though in modern times now, like in the WWE, like they have the ring sponsorships and everything, I feel like back then we still saw more promotions of products and stuff during the shows
Do you remember how
that were
much
outside of the regular commercial breaks.
JR and Jim Ross would hawk Snickers or
Stride
Skittles
X
or
Bad,
yeah, like it was
1-800 collect.
pretty much non-stop. But
Yeah.
at least you had some cool guys that you liked telling you about it, right? But let's go to the match. You know, nothing too much. They had Dusty involved with WCW back in the day, so they're just going over a little bit of the storyline stuff here. We don't really need to get into that too much. Dustin was over there at the time as well, so they had Dustin and Dusty over there. But the match was all right. It was 7 minutes and 17 seconds. I
Was
thought it
that when
was
he was running the American Nightmare? Sorry to cut you off.
um, I think it was actually. I'm not 100% sure. They may have been going with a natural before that, and then went with that. He was mixing up a whole bunch of different stuff. Like I said, I really wasn't watching too much here at that point. He was gold dust to me here. Um,
Right.
but anyways, this was a typical match. Rick's checked out. He's got a shirt on. Anytime Rick had a shirt on, even in WCW, I feel like he was like wasn't too proud of his body. Um,
Yeah, he was getting late in the career here, and he was starting to have that self doubt and stuff like that. And once he got into the WWE, Hunter was actually one of the people that helped to kind of curb that.
yeah,
He's like, hey, remember who you are? You're fucking Ric Flair, and
yeah. It's
that sort of stuff.
Triple H is the
Also,
biggest Ric Flair fan in the world.
oh yeah, huge. Ric Flair is actually the guy that hired him to work in WCW when he was terrorizing back in the day.
But
Rick was booking back then. But anyhow, honorable mention to Charles Robinson refereeing the final
what,
match
Lil
of Nitro,
Nate,
by the way. Dude is still refing in the WWE
he was doing it
today. We
last
just
night.
watched him last night. He refed Ric Flair's final match with Shawn Michaels in the Ric Flair's WWE retirement match. He's kind of their high profile ref. If there's a big match, you can count on now that he's probably going to be the referee. So
He was a part of
he's
the
made
ring
quite a
crew.
career.
He
Yeah,
ran it for a while. I don't know if he still is, but I know he did it for a long time.
I went to a house show back in like 2010, and they were having a cage match as the main event, and Charles Robinson, he was reffing at the time, but he was helping the ring crew guys put it. Was the old blue metal cage. It
Yeah,
wasn't the fence
that's
cage,
my favorite
and he was
cage.
helping them put that up. Yeah.
That's I remember that one of the things that always stick in my brain is when Stone Cold was dressed as the guy that was locking it up, and he locked Vince in there with him.
Yeah.
But that let's talk about the match a little bit.
Yeah,
Um,
circling back. Sorry
th-
about the tangent, folks.
gonna keep happening. We're all good. Probably don't need to apologize for it. They get used to it or just don't listen to us, I guess. But
Yeah.
but anyways, yeah, it was a good match. It's like I feel like they cut to like let's just say they had a 30-minute match. They just cut to the last 7 minutes of it pretty quickly, right?
Yeah. It was a classic Flair and Sting match. Flair works heel, Sting works baby, just like we've seen from them a whole bunch of times. They had real good back and forth. Both of the dudes got their shit in. Ric Flair lived up to the moniker dirtiest player in the game. He was trying to cheat at every turn that he
That's what you want
could.
to see, though. It's Rick.
You know, Sting ends up, winning in a heroic Sting fashion with the Scorpion Deathlock. There's a pomp and circumstance after the match. Sting and Flair are hugging after the match, shake hands.
But the
A lot of
match,
respect and love for each other.
I want to circle back to something real quick and then just remember where you left off. But it's
Yeah,
funny that even though they're both faces here, and you see that all the time in AEW, and this circles back to that heat thing we were talking about. Rick still know that you can't have two guys working the same shit in the match. You gotta have a heel, you gotta have a face. So they had the dynamic right in the match, and the crowd went with it, which was good. But today, how many matches do you see where both guys are working as the face, and they're both doing the high spots, and nobody's working dastardly, and there's just and the announcers aren't selling it correctly because they can't pitch one guy being the bad guy. How many matches do we see like that a week in AEW?
tons. And to their credit, they still end up being good matches, but the
Oh
the
yeah, but that's
psychology
not the
is
point.
not necessarily there.
Yeah, like if you were watching a fight between two of your friends, would you be into that fight or would you want them to stop?
Probably want them to stop, I would imagine. No, dude, don't do that. You'd be trying to break
Even
in.
if it was a good fight and they're beating the shit out of each other, you would want it to stop more.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really easy psychology, that is like lost. They still have it. I mean, these matches happen in WWE sometimes too,
Oh
but
yeah.
for the most part, it's more of an AEW thing. But were you done with the match or?
Yeah, I mean that was pretty much it. Other than the Flair and Sting was definitely the right choice,
Yeah,
probably the best choice for the final WCW
historic.
match. I don't know who else from the company that you could put, that represents WCW so well, other than Flair and Sting.
But
Um,
here's the main event if you want to cut right to that.
I thought
'Cause
this was the main event.
no, I'm talking about like the last thing on the show.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well,
Yeah, we still got.
I before we get to that, I got a few more notes.
Okay, cool.
Flair went on to WWE and had a super successful
Oh,
run,
that
as we all
retirement,
know.
that wasn't real.
Right. Unfortunately, he had that retirement match against Shawn Michaels in 2008,
The
which,
match.
by the way, I was there. That was the WrestleMania in Orlando, so I got to see that match, and I got to see the Undertaker versus Edge for the World Heavyweight Championship. So that was really cool to get to be there for Flair's retirement
Yeah,
match.
that's amazing.
It's literally considered to be one of, if not the greatest send-off retirement match of all time. The Shawn Michael with tears in his eyes, "I'm sorry, I love you." Ric Flair, the old dog, trying to not go down without a fight. Like,
Well,
there,
they both get it. Both guys
yeah,
involved are two of the greatest ever. The match had no chance to be bad. There was no way Sean wasn't. Sean can do whatever he wants in the match. He's one the best in-ring talent uh, ever, probably.
yeah,
If he wants to do something in a match, it's going to come across exactly how it should. Rick is one of the best in-ring guys ever. He's probably Shawn Michaels' favorite wrestler ever. He's probably almost every single guy that we look up to in wrestling's favorite wrestler ever.
your
Um,
favorite wrestler's favorite
yeah.
wrestler type of thing, like him and Dusty.
This had no chance to be bad. It was an amazing. It was an amazing match between those two. So sorry, go ahead.
I think at some point maybe we'll do something
Yeah,
about that match. That would be a good thing.
we will.
But Flair maintained the wrestling itch post WWE. He managed to stay out of wrestling for a while, but then he ended up having a pretty long run in TNA. It wasn't necessarily a super great run, but there were a lot of entertaining things. The woo off with Jay Lethal,
Yeah,
which
that's
was
legendary.
entirely unscripted. That entire segment, they just had like the shortest outline of all time. And Jay Lethal goes to Ric Flair and he's like, "Well, what are we gonna do out there?" And Flair tells him, "I don't rehearse my promos ahead of time. I'll see you out there, kid." And they just went out there and did that off the cuff.
Jay Lethal's
So
the
that
man.
that's a testament to how good both of those guys were.
That's another guy in
And then,
AEW that's disappeared.
yeah, what happened to Jay
I
Lethal?
guess he's in ROH, but I wouldn't know because I don't watch it. I'm sure
Yeah,
it's got good matches, but Jay Lethal should be one of their top heels. There's no reason why he shouldn't. He could teach
yeah,
everybody in that company how to fucking actually work uh, more psychology into their matches and still keep the exact same pace that they're doing now.
The last time I remember seeing him, he was in the group with like
Jeff
Jarrett
Jarrett,
and
Singh,
Sanjay and that big old Indian guy. I can't remember
Satnam
his name.
Singh, right?
That dude is huge.
Yeah, they have him on ORH now. When I went to, they had him in the ring wrestling in the last show I went to.
Oh no.
Yeah,
Did it get any better yet?
he's better than Kali.
Okay, well,
It's serviceable.
for a while there, he it looked like he was moving like Kali.
Every match doesn't need to be 20 minutes. Have him in there for 5 minutes. He doesn't need to do anything. All you got to do is hit him and he doesn't go down. And then he
He's
eventually
a
goes
giant.
down and it's a big deal.
Yeah, you have him work like a giant. They're chopping down the tree, and then the dude hits you with a few power moves at the end, and he wins anyway.
Yeah. I mean, but beyond that, do you want to jump to the last event?
Oh, I had a little bit more about Sting.
Okay.
I covered Flair post WCW, but we didn't get into Sting.
Okay,
Sting ended
cool.
up going to TNA, and he had a widely successful run there.
The
Multi-time
Joker
world
Sting, man.
champion, several year run. Yeah, Joker Sting was actually pretty good. Sting was
Main Event Mafia.
Main Event Mafia was just insane. Kevin Nash, Booker T,
Good shit.
Sting, Kurt
That
Angle,
that's good
some of
shit,
the biggest
pal.
stars in the industry. Yeah, literally. You know, TNA got a bad rap at the beginning, early on, because just like WWE at the time, they had to follow the Attitude Era, and they even had a bunch of Attitude Era stars. And going back and rewatching that stuff, it's way better than what I remember thinking it was at the time, just because I was so jaded due to the Attitude Era. So
Cora
after
started
Sting did
watching
all
old
that,
TNA, and she's like, "Man, these shows aren't bad."
they're great.
Yeah.
They're really good. It was good until about the time that Hogan showed up, and then it kind of
It
it
still
jumped the shark
wasn't
a bit.
it still wasn't that bad compared to some of the stuff
Yeah.
that WE was doing from like 2014 to 2019.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned 2014. That's a natural segue for the next thing that I'm going to talk about here. That's actually when Sting ended up signing with the WWE. Had his match with Triple H at WrestleMania 31, where we finally, after you know over a decade plus, get to see the NWO face to face with DX. There was the
Yep.
DX was doing the run in to help Triple H. The NWO came out to help, Sting, and the crowd lost their mind. There were adult men just crying because you were seeing stuff that you never thought that you'd get to see, and then the
Wrong guy won.
Triple H ended up going over in that match, and they kind of did with Sting
That's
what
what we
he
were
was
talking about
afraid of them
earlier.
doing the whole time,
Well, remember
which
that
is
we
why
talked
he
about that
didn't
earlier.
go there. Yeah, that's why he didn't go there sooner. And then in 2015, Sting got injured in a match with Rollins,
Yeah,
taking a
the
buckle
buckle
bomb.
bomb.
Why you're going to give an almost 60-year-old in-ring guy a buckle bomb, I don't know.
Remember he injured Finn around the same time too, but he did the buckle bomb on the guardrails.
Yeah, and it's just like
That
I
was
think that's part of why they eliminated him. Like
that was
you don't want to
Finn,
see him do that.
and
Yeah,
he had one night as the Universal Champion. Remember that? And
yeah, that's not
he had
great.
to get forfeited. But yeah, they don't do that too much these days, do they? Or I guess it
I
depends
don't.
on who he's in
I
there
couldn't
with.
tell you the last time that I saw a buckle, but I mean, I imagine he would bust it out in like a big match, like a big moment for a
Yeah.
big match, something like that. But I think that's something that they kind of got rid of, just like they took away the stomp from him for a while. They were afraid that dudes were going to get too hurt with it. But yeah, that would end Sting's in-ring WWE career. I think he was under contract with them until about COVID time, and then he turned up in AEW in 2021, and he was there until 2024, where he retired as a tag team champion with Darby Allin.
We went over
So
that.
I mean, he really long career.
Yeah, and Cora, she wasn't into wrestling growing up. She didn't know much about it. And she really got into Sting. She liked him, and she got into watching some of his old stuff. And she's into kind of horror movies and stuff. And not to say Crow was a horror movie by any means.
Yeah, it was like a dark gothic,
Action
like
type
awesome
deal.
movie back in the
Uh,
day. That was one of my favorite movies of all time.
but she watched the Crow movies, so I mean it's pretty natural for her to watch that and be like, oh, that's cool. And I mean, fuck, after that retirement, how could you not? His sons come out there. They had the double. What was his version of the sharpshooter?
The Scorpion
Deathlock.
Deathlock.
That's it. Yeah, and I don't know. Sting's the man. She bought a shirt of his, and she wears it to the shows we go to. Then I wear my Cornette shirt. Um, uh,
That's awesome.
yeah, you've seen it on TV with me wearing it. I wore that to the
Yeah, we
movies
did
the other day.
that. Yeah, you were.
That was right
For the
on it.
fans that don't know, they were MJF was it MJF and Hangman. They were brawling like 3 feet from TJ, and he was just right on TV, big as shit.
Not, it was MJF and Kyle Fletcher, and then it was Daniel Bryan
Oh,
and Jeff Jarrett. But one day I'll upload some pictures. Maybe I'll do a little bit of short on that. Like here's this. But I plan to keep going to wrestling shows. I enjoy it. They're doing an indie show here in where I'm at. I
oh,
was,
that's cool.
yeah, it's gonna have Kane in it and a couple other guys. I may or may not go to it. We'll see. It depends if I feel like it. But my Kane's definitely not getting me up to go see any event in
Right?
2025.
We
He
uh we we got the WWE coming here.
they're coming
They're
here
doing
soon too.
they're doing Saturday night main event, Friday night SmackDown, and Raw
I
from
don't
Tampa.
I don't have $500 for shitty seats.
Right. Well, some of the seats, like I was looking because I was thinking about going to the Saturday night main event. There are some that are like 60 for like it's
Okay.
nosebleed though, but I mean like I don't want to sit in the nosebleed section
Me
of a
either.
wrestling event.
That's why the AEW events are okay. They're more expensive than they used to be, but they're more accessible. That one event we were just talking about that I went to that had Bryan and MJF at it. I was fourth
Yeah.
row. Like right up there. Um,
Yeah,
it,
you tried to get that at a WWE show, you're paying like five,
that
600 bucks.
no, no, I think it's more than that. Like this time of year, you're paying thousands.
Yep.
At least I think. I know they're pretty fucking expensive, but you want to get to the main thing now.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Because this is really what I wanted to talk about. Um, this was nuts because it's like this is a simulcast, like we were saying earlier. It showed both these things at the same time, and it's just Vince coming out and basically him talking about the J double or J E double S Jarrett of the world gone. Like he did earlier. He's basically just talking about how he's gonna end up getting rid of all these wrestlers that we liked, and he makes Lillian Garcia announce them again because I guess they missed it on one of the simulcasts. And he's how do you beat a billionaire? Well, by becoming one. And he just talks for a little bit, and eventually you get No Chance in Hell. And Vince is waiting for Shane to come out, but it cuts to the Titantron, and it has Shane in Panama City, Florida. And Vince does the best shocked face ever. At least he did back in the day.
I'm looking at the picture here right
Yeah,
now of the split screen. It's great.
yeah. Shane has his turtleneck on. It looks like it's too big. Vince, like I said, he's just a man at these facials. I think he taught a lot of guys to really express themselves with their face. So that's
Right.
why,
It's important to be able
yeah.
to emote.
But Shane comes out and he's saying that Vince's ego got the better of him. And on the contract, it does read McMahon, but it doesn't read Vince McMahon. It reads Shane McMahon. Crowd goes nuts at both places. And he's sitting there talking about how WCW is going to take Vince on. Heyman and JR can't believe what they heard. He bought WCW right from under his dad's nose. Shane screwed him, one upped his old man. JR plugs the rest of the episode of Raw, and because Raw was doing was it 3 hours here yet, or
That was 3 hours, and at that point, WCW had shrank back down to two, and that the
and it was
final
taped
episode
most
might
of
have
the
even
time.
been a 1 hour.
Yeah, but it was
I can't.
taped most. I don't think it was, but it was taped most of the time, right? Like this is the first live Nitro in a while. I could be wrong about that, but yeah, they give you the graphic on Nitro and then it ends. Um,
And
it,
then it's just over forever.
yeah, we got a little bit of the good and bad here, but obviously Sting versus Flair is never bad. Booker and Steiner was good. The Cruiser tag was all right. Helms versus Chavo was good. All of them were short. There's really not a lot to talk about here. The pacing of the show was actually pretty good for what they had. They were rushed. Vince had to get his segments in there. Stasiak versus Bigelow was terrible. Um, I don't
At least
know.
we got Stacy though.
Yeah, what do you think?
I mean, that's a fair assessment of the matches. The man, that Stasiak Bigelow match was just so bad, and
Yeah,
I hate to speak ill of the dead, but at this point, Bigelow was kind of out of gas, or at a minimum, he wasn't in the type of he was never like a great bodybuilder guy, but I mean he wasn't in the best shape of his career
Yeah,
by this point, is
that's a
what I'll
fair
say.
statement.
And there a lot of people look for things like performer of the night and things of that nature. And like this article says, that there's they say they have a hard time picking,
It was
one.
WCW tonight.
Yeah,
That was the winner. It's kind of a celebration in a way, and it sucks that they couldn't have had a bigger event to make this happen. But we talked about this some earlier, but this sucks. WCW was awesome, and it sucks to see what it became. Scott Steiner was doing some really good work around this time. His promos were amazing. He they he was like one of the biggest monsters in wrestling at the time, and it just it's a bummer that WCW was gone here. And Vince made out with a killing buying it, and he really made a lot of money throughout the years. It really stinks that the invasion angle didn't go over as well as it should have because they didn't have the top guys at the time. They didn't have Rick at first. They didn't have Sting. They didn't have Scott. They didn't have the NWO. Some of these guys came later, but the impact of the invasion was already gone at that point, and
right. This is not a slight against guys like Buff Bagwell, but
they're not
people wanted
Hulk
to
Hogan.
see, right. They wanted to see the stars from WCW, not the mid card guys.
At least we ended up
And
getting Hogan versus Rock at one point. There were some good that they ended up doing with everything, but it's
yeah, and I mean that was great. That's like one of those generational matches. That's one of those, like, every wrestling fan, if you haven't seen it, you should watch. It's a great tutorial on, like, guys being able to work on the fly and, like, change with what the crowd's doing.
yeah,
Because if you watch back a lot of that match, The Rock ended up working a lot of that match in a heel style, and Hogan ended up
yeah. That
working a
isn't
lot
how
of
they
that
went in.
in the face. Right. They swapped because the crowd swapped, and the both of them were smart enough to know, okay, well, here's what we're doing now. And it became one of the greatest generational matches. And I'm not talking about in-ring work, because we all know that, like, Hogan's in-ring work isn't really the greatest of all time, but he did the Hogan
He could
stuff.
work. He just didn't.
Yeah. If you watch his matches in Japan, really good technical stuff.
I
And
forget who he was trained by, but I'm pretty sure it was a Japanese guy at one point, and they taught him some cool shit.
the dude that broke his leg, his name's escaping me.
Yeah. We'll might do a little short on that, on who trained him or whatever, and then say, "Did you know he used to do some pretty good stuff?"
Hiro Matsuda.
That's right.
He broke Hogan's leg one time to demonstrate how serious that wrestling was, and they thought that at that point that Hogan was going to be run off, and he still came back.
Look at him. There was no way he wasn't going to be something in the wrestling industry. And
Yeah, he
we did a short yesterday on that. It was actually going to be Dusty at first, but Dusty didn't believe him that it was going to work, because he wanted to stick with the traditional territory system.
well, I
Which
mean, at the time especially, nobody could have the width of vision that Vince McMahon had in terms of the national expansion. Like, nobody thought that national
nah,
expansion was going to work.
and
There were a lot of people
everybody was kind of
that,
protecting each other, staying in their lane too.
yep.
And then Vince said, "Fuck that." And his dad gave him the company pretty much, and Vince had to pay him off over time. And once Vince got the reins, he's just like, "We're going for this." And his dad didn't like it at first, but after a while, his dad congratulated him and was like, "You know what? You did it." I think that was the only validation he ever got from his dad. They had a terrible relationship.
Yeah.
But sorry, I just scratching my head, I whacked my thing there. But yeah, it's just I'm kind of a little bit at a loss for words to really describe how big of a deal this was, because it's until AEW popped up, there was no real competition for WWE, and AEW isn't the competition that the WCW was for WWE at the time. WCW was beating WWE in the ratings for 83 weeks. It was a big deal. Everybody there was pretty over for the most part. It was just an amazing time in wrestling, and I'm sure we'll talk about the Attitude Era more in length and pretty much every aspect at some point in one of our episodes. It's just we really wanted to highlight and talk about WCW because it was I was watching WCW at first, and then I transitioned to WWE at the time. Everybody was channel changing in between, and I feel like over time WWE ended up winning people over. But it's Goldberg was a huge deal at the time. He was so over, it was ridiculous. And then they had Stone Cold over on the other side. Man, I'm twisting
Kind
my
of
stuff
weird.
up. On the other side,
Speaking of Goldberg, that he wasn't in this last episode of Nitro. You would think that
I didn't
he
he? I think wasn't he hurt too? He
probably.
kept getting hurt a lot. Remember, he was like punching glass and
Yeah, cutting arteries and stupid shit like that.
yeah, and then
Oh, and
he
one of the things that we had forgotten to cover was they had 288 episodes of Nitro, and AEW is at 287 right now. So this coming Wednesday, from when we're recording this
they're doing a
now,
themed
today's the
episode
5th,
on it.
so it'll be the 9th, which is a few days from now. They will be at 288 just like Nitro.
But I'm pretty sure they're doing a themed episode and celebrating it on AEW. Like, oh, this is how long Nitro lasted and we're beating him. Which is, why would you do that? But I want to circle back for a second.
Of
We were
course.
talking about the territory system a little bit. WCW was kind of one of the last remnants of that style of wrestling. Once WCW was gone, those fans never came back. They're gone.
Right.
The more old school Southern style type of
The
wrestling that
wrestling
yeah, that,
fans.
that that they brought to the table. That's what I learned on. I'm not gonna lie, my parents did have me watching WWF when I was a child, but when I started watching what I wanted to watch, it was Rick. It was Hogan because he was in WCW at the time when I was watching. It was all those guys, and then over time, like I was saying, the WWF one, but WCW just had a style and the brand, and there's just never going to be anything like it, and maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it's a bad, but in the end, I'm always going to remember WCW. I'll be an 83-year-old man talking to like my extended family, like when they're coming to see me die, and be like, "You remember that time Hulk Hogan ended up turning heel?" Or like. But
I mean, some of the biggest wrestling moments in history happened in WCW. So I mean,
yeah.
I don't think that we can say that about AEW just yet. So for all of their bluster about, oh, we're about to eclipse the amount of episodes that they've had, and it's like, all right, well, how about you start eclipsing? I don't want to crap on them, but I got some
I mean,
negative
what you're
stuff.
saying is
How about you
fair.
start? How
They don't
about you
have any
start
stars.
eclipsing the success that
Yeah.
WCW had, or eclipsing the ratings that they had?
Well, somebody would
And I
say they
realize,
would because they have a bigger TV contract than WCW had.
yeah, but there's not no 6.4 million people a week watching. Also, to be fair, there's not that many people watching WWE a week either. Wrestling's just not in the spot that it was 30 years ago in terms of popularity.
Yeah, yeah. People watch different ways too.
Yeah.
But what are your final thoughts? You got anything else to say about WCW, or are we wrapping that up?
Well, I don't really have much to add other than it's a bummer that it's gone. It was one of those things I kind of thought, because it was a big, successful billion-dollar company, that it would just kind of go and, not end, but
Well,
it just,
well, Eric did try to keep it going, and he was going to get funding and buy it, and he was going to keep the time slot because Vince actually bought the TV time slot. That came with it, but he didn't pursue doing it for a whole bunch of obvious reasons. You imagine how ridiculous that would have been. He already had 3, 4 wrestling shows going on at the time, and what are you going to do? Add 2 more? But
yeah.
beyond that, I feel like that's about it. We went over that in pretty good detail, and I love WCW, and you guys are going to hear us talking about it a lot throughout these episodes here and there. If I can't imagine we're not going to have a whole bunch of different topics related around it and talking about people's time there, and I mean, pretty easy stuff
All
to
the
talk
different
about.
cool goings on of wrestling that have happened throughout the history of wrestling, essentially.
Yeah. Uh,
Nothing will be off limits. There may be some things that we cover with a little bit more kid gloves, so to speak,
yeah.
because of the nature of the things that happened and how bad that they might be. But you know, it's one of those things where we'll talk about anything that has happened in wrestling, anything that's happening in wrestling.
Oh yeah. We're going to be talking about
Nobody's immune.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about pretty much anything and everything. We just wanted to kind of highlight something that we want to, like I said, we're going to talk about what we want to talk about. If we don't want to talk about AEW that week, we're not going to talk about it. If we don't want to talk about WWE that week, we won't talk about it. We're going to talk about what we want. And if what we want is going to be some episode that's going to last 2 hours on some stupid shit that we like, that's what's going to happen. And hopefully you guys are there on the ride with us. And you ready to wrap this up, Dave?
One more thing to mention, but yes, I am. We forgot to mention this during the anniversary of Nitro because we ended up going so long on that. But it was also honorable mention the anniversary of WrestleMania 13, the Bret Hart Steve Austin match,
Yeah.
which is going into the Hall of Fame this year.
They beat us to
One
it.
of
We
the
were
greatest,
talking about it before them.
one of the greatest matches of all time, literally. Yeah, we've been talking about this for for weeks now, and it was just one of those things that ended up being after we talked about it. WWE is putting the match into the Hall of
First
Fame as
match
one
in
of their
it.
first matches, and it's like that's a reasonable match to have be your first match in the Hall of Fame.
You know why that
It's
happened?
probably because they're going to have Steve on the card, I assume.
No. So UFC, which is owned by TKO as well. The UFC Hall of Fame put individual matches into their Hall of Fame. So I
Okay.
feel like that they took that inspiration from them because they're all working together. Their marketing team,
Right.
everything, it's all in one now for the most part. So I feel like that's why it happened, which is a logical choice. Why the fuck wouldn't you want these guys to aspire to have these great matches for people to remember? I'll let you take back over from what you were saying. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I just wanted to point that out. That's why I'm pretty sure that's why that happened.
Oh yeah, no, that was pretty much it. My point was pretty much over there. I mean, it just is what it is.
Amazing
Jeez.
match. So we talk about color today and how AEW probably has color in multiple matches in one episode, but this was the best use of color in a wrestling match you will ever see. The
Yep.
visual of Stone Cold passed out, not tapping, with all the blood coming off of him. He was a heel that they did the double face turn. It's probably the most effective double turn in wrestling history, man. Bret Hart was a face before this, and then after this, he became a heel, and Stone Cold was a heel, and became a face, and he became one of the biggest, most successful guys in the company. Bret Hart can do anything in that ring. He was the guy to set this off. It was perfect timing. Everything couldn't have been better. Both guys came out of this like $1,000,000. How we say that you want to go into a match and accomplish something afterwards, they accomplished it more than anybody could have ever imagined. And that T-shirt that they sold, the Bloodstone T-shirt, with
Yep.
black and white Stone Cold face with the blood coming out of his face, fucking amazing. And like if you want to put a masterpiece into that chef's kiss, this is it. Everything about it. All right.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't have said it any better myself. That's a perfect description. Um, Man, what a
Amazing.
great match!
Yeah.
It really, I can't say enough good things about it.
People imitate this
I,
match today.
yep,
Wrestlers
I
these
kind of
days, like,
lost.
you're good. Punk, FTR, all these guys that we look at today and say that they're like doing great, they're all modeling their in-ring work after Bret Hart. They're not doing fucking Hulk Hogan. They're not doing the Ultimate Warrior. They're not doing the biggest stars in wrestling. They want to be Bret Hart. Am
Because
I
Bret
right
Hart
about
was
that?
literally, when he says best there is, best there was, best there ever will be, like that's not a meme. That's a real thing. He believes that, and a lot of fans of theirs believe that as well.
Hey, all I know is he didn't hurt anybody. His shit looked legit. It was super tight, technical. Um, he was the man.
Yep.
But I guess that's about on that topic there. We covered it pretty good. I'm glad that you brought that up because it's the perfect little thing to end this on, right?
Yeah, nice little segue to into our ending.
Well, that takes us to the end. Really appreciate you guys listening. Again, I'm TJ.
And I'm Dave. Hopefully, you guys had fun. We had fun doing this. I know I did.
Yeah, we just really appreciate you guys coming in and listening to us. We know we went off on a little bit here on a lot of stuff, but it's just stuff that we want to listen to, and we just really looking forward to keep doing this, and we're going to get better at it. We're going to provide you guys with good wrestling content and takes, and we just kind of hope to share some of I wouldn't say expertise because we're not experts in anything, but some of our knowledge on wrestling and wrestling history and just some of the things that make a show and what goes into it and all that stuff. We talked about it a little bit earlier, but just we're gonna do an episode 2 here soon. I guess we're gonna just try to do these on Saturdays, and we'll try to get it out to you as soon as we can after we record it. But we're gonna have episode 2 coming up. we don't really have a topic yet. I think we were talking about greatest heel turn, but nothing set in stone. We're gonna go on what we want to talk about, like we keep saying. But check out our Twitter. Um, it's Overmark ENT as in entertainment. It'll be in the link on our stuff. Check out our YouTube. You're already listening to it right now, unless you're checking out on Spotify, but it's not on that yet. You're watching on YouTube. Once we get everything else set up, we will have links so you can listen to all other stuff.
Yeah. The usual YouTube stuff, like, comment, subscribe. Even if it's a negative comment, we're not immune to criticism. We know that what we're doing isn't perfect and is not going to be for everybody, but we welcome everybody's opinions, and we
We want
will
to
take things
converse.
under consideration. Like if there's a criticism and it's a legitimate criticism, we're happy to address it and make changes. We're trying to put out the best show possible here.
We both have ADHD, so if we drift off a little bit at times, you got to live with that. But if you're our age, you probably do as well, so I don't think it's going to be that big a deal. But just, we really appreciate you, and we're about to get out of here, and just join us next time, and I hope you guys have a great day.
Hell yeah, we'll see y'all next time.
Bye, guys.